Hey there, history enthusiasts. If you're enjoying this gentle voyage into the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below to share your thoughts. Let's ease into the serene world of 11th century China, where the rhythms of daily life unfolded in places like the tea houses of Kaifeng, a city alive with the soft pulse of human connection. Imagine, if you will, the golden light of a late afternoon filtering through latticed windows, casting a warm glow over wooden tables worn smooth by countless hands. In the heart of the Song Dynasty, Kaifeng stood as a thriving capital, its streets weaving through a tapestry of markets and homes, all leading to these humble yet enchanting tea houses. Here, amid the gentle hum of conversation, one could find respite from the day's labors, a place where tea was not merely a drink, but a bridge to tranquility. The air carried the faint, earthy aroma of freshly brewed leaves, a scent that lingered like a whispered secret, inviting all who entered to pause and breathe. Servers moved with graceful poise through the bustling rooms, their silk tunics shimmering in the soft candlelight. These attendants, often young and attentive, wore tunics of deep emerald or azure, the fabric flowing like water as they poured steaming tea from delicate porcelain pots. Picture the scene: a server's steady hand tilting the pot just so, releasing a thin stream of amber liquid into waiting cups. The steam rose in lazy spirals, carrying with it the subtle fragrance of jasmine or oolong, a warmth that enveloped the room and soothed the senses. Each pour was a ritual, precise yet unhurried, the liquid meeting the cup with a soft, satisfying clink that echoed faintly against the murmur of voices. In these moments, the tea house became a sanctuary, a social hub where scholars, merchants, and travelers gathered not for grand debates, but for the simple pleasure of shared silence and sips. Drawing from ancient records, such as those preserved in song poetry, we glimpse the everyday magic of these establishments. Poets like those from the era often described the tea house as a floating world where the outside chaos dissolved into harmony. One might recall verses that speak of tea leaves dancing in hot water, like autumn leaves on a gentle stream, evoking the visual poetry of the brew itself. The rooms were spacious, yet intimate, with low stools and tables arranged in clusters, allowing for easy conversation without the press of crowds. Lanterns hung from the ceilings, their flames flickering softly, casting shadows that played across the walls like silent companions. The clinking of cups, a sound as rhythmic as a heartbeat, blended with the occasional rustle of silk robes or the soft tread of sandaled feet, creating a symphony of serenity that lulled patrons into a state of peaceful reflection. In Kaifeng's tea houses, life unfolded with a tranquil rhythm, far removed from the grand halls of power. Here, people from all walks of life converged, their differences fading in the warmth of shared cups. A merchant might rest his weary bones on a cushioned bench, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup as he exchanged tales of distant travels, while a local artisan sat nearby, savoring the steam that curled upward like threads of mist. The tea itself was a marvel, sourced from the verdant hills of nearby provinces, its flavors varying from the bold, nutty notes of purr to the light, floral hints of green tea. As one sipped, the liquid warmed the throat, a gentle heat that spread through the body, easing tensions and inviting deeper breaths. The walls, adorned with simple scrolls of calligraphy, bore phrases like peace in a cup, reminding all who entered of the teahouse's role as a haven for the soul. Yet amid this calm, there lies a quiet mystery that adds a touch of intrigue to the narrative. The owners of these tea houses, the unseen hands that kept the wheels turning, remain largely unrecorded in the annals of history, while Sima Qian's earlier chronicles offer glimpses into the social fabrics of ancient China. They seldom delve into the everyday commerce of tea, leaving a veil over these proprietors. In song poetry, we find oblique references, perhaps a line about a shadowy figure tending the flames, but nothing concrete. Who were these individuals, these guardians of tranquility? Were they modest families, passing down recipes and rituals through generations, or wandering entrepreneurs who slipped into the background once the doors opened? This enigma, drawn from the gaps in historical texts, lends a subtle wit to the story, as if the tea houses themselves conspired to keep their secrets, much like the steam that rises and vanishes into the air. As evening deepened, the tea houses of Kaifeng transformed into pockets of light in the gathering dusk. The air grew cooler, carrying a hint of night-blooming flowers from the streets outside, their petals unfurling in the breeze. Patrons lingered longer, their voices dropping to hushed tones, sharing stories that wove through the room like the threads of a dream. A server might pause to refill a cup, the porcelain cool against one's palm before the tea's warmth seeped in, a sensory delight that grounded the mind in the present. The faint scent of incense, burning in a corner brazier, mingled with the tea's aroma, creating a layered fragrance that invited contemplation. One could almost hear the echoes of ancient poets in the rustle of leaves outside, their words immortalizing these spaces as more than mere buildings. They were the heartbeat of community, where bonds formed over shared rituals. In these tea houses, the essence of Song Dynasty life revealed itself through subtle details. The tables, polished to a soft sheen, bore trays of delicate snacks, steamed dumplings with a savory filling that released a burst of flavor, or sweet rice cakes dusted with powdered sugar, their textures contrasting the smoothness of the tea. Each bite and sip created a harmonious balance, a sensory tapestry that engaged the palate without overwhelming the senses. The lighting, ever gentle, came from oil lamps that cast a golden hue, softening the lines of faces and fostering an atmosphere of trust. Conversations flowed like the tea itself, meandering from the weather's gentle moods to the beauty of seasonal changes, all underscored by the soft clatter of utensils and the occasional laugh, light as a feather. Historical accounts, such as those inferred from song poetry collections, paint this world with vivid strokes. A verse might describe the moon's reflection in a tea bowl, mirroring the soul's quietude, capturing the philosophical depth that infused daily routines. These tea houses were not just places for refreshment. They were crucibles of culture, where ideas simmered like the tea leaves in hot water. Yet through it all, the mystery of the owners persisted, a subtle puzzle that added depth to the scene. Perhaps they were poets themselves, or artisans who preferred the shadows, their identities lost to time, like whispers carried away by the wind. As the night wore on, the tea houses emptied gradually, patrons stepping out into the cool air with a sense of renewal. The servers, in their silk tunics, tidied the space with methodical care, the clinking of cups fading into silence. This was the true essence of Kaifeng's tea house life, a blend of bustle and calm, where the ordinary became extraordinary through shared experiences. The steam from the last pot curled upward, dissipating into the darkness, leaving behind an intangible peace. And so, as we conclude this gentle exploration, let us turn our thoughts toward the next chapter, where other facets of Song Dynasty life await, ready to unfold like the petals of a morning flower. Until then, may your own evenings be filled with similar serenity. In the hushed glow of Kaifeng's tea houses, where the air hung thick with the earthy scent of aged oolong and the soft rustle of silk robes brushing against wooden benches, a figure sat alone at a corner table. Sushi, the esteemed scholar of the Song Dynasty, cradled his ink brush like an old friend, its tip hovering above a scroll of fine rice paper. Born in the year 1037 under the vast skies of Meishan, he had grown into a man whose words flowed as effortlessly as the Yangtze River, weaving tales that captured the essence of life's quiet rhythms. The lamplight flickered gently, casting warm shadows across his face, lined with the wisdom of years spent in contemplation. As he dipped the brush into a stone inkwell, the faint aroma of pine resin mingling with the steam rising from his cup of tea. From his earliest days, Sushi's life unfolded like a scroll unrolling in the dawn light, marked by a profound dedication to the written word. As a child in Sichuan, he had been drawn to the classics, his father's guidance shaping him into a vessel for poetry and prose. Imagine the young Su, no more than a boy, sitting by a stream under willow trees, the cool water's murmur blending with the scratch of his first bamboo pen against paper. Those formative years instilled in him a love for the lyrical, where every verse became a bridge between the human heart and the natural world. In Kaifeng, far from those rustic beginnings, he found solace in the tea house's ambient hum, the distant clink of porcelain cups, the whisper of patrons exchanging whispers, and the subtle sweetness of osmanthus blossoms carried on the breeze. His scholar robes, a cascade of deep indigo silk embroidered with faint patterns of cranes in flight, draped over him like a second skin, their fabric soft against his skin as he leaned forward, lost in creation. Su Shi's literary contributions emerged as a gentle tide, rising steadily through the song era's intellectual currents. He mastered the art of Psy poetry, those melodic verses set to music, evoking the serenity of moonlit nights, or the delicate bloom of plum blossoms in winter. One could almost hear the strings of a distant pipa as he composed, the instrument's soft twang echoing in his mind while he wrote his famous work. The Red Cliff painted vivid scenes of ancient battles and personal reflection. Yet in the Teahouse, he favored lighter pieces, like odes to the simple pleasure of sipping tea under eaves where rain pattered like fingertips on a drum. The ink from his brush spread in deliberate strokes, each one releasing a faint, woody fragrance that blended with the tea's herbal notes, creating a symphony for the senses. Scholars of the time, gathered in such spaces, spoke of him with a mix of admiration and quiet envy, for his words seemed to capture the fleeting beauty of life without the weight of sorrow. As the seasons turned, Su Shi's influence spread like the fragrance of jasmine tea, steeping in a pot, subtle yet pervasive. He was not merely a poet, but a philosopher of the everyday, turning ordinary moments into profound insights. In one Teahouse gathering, perhaps on a crisp autumn evening, when the air carried the scent of fallen leaves and roasting chestnuts, he recited verses that likened the human spirit to a river stone, smoothed by time's gentle flow. His essays, collected in works like the Dongpo collection, offered guidance on living harmoniously, drawing from Confucian wisdom and Taoist ease. The sensory world around him fueled his creativity, the warmth of the teapot's handle under his palm, the cool touch of the paper as he rolled it up, the faint taste of salt on the air from nearby street vendors peddling snacks. These details wove into his writing, making his contributions timeless, as if each line invited the reader to pause and breathe deeply, to feel the world as he did. Yet, amid this tapestry of achievement, there lingered a mystery, soft as a whisper in the wind, concerning the poems that slipped through the fingers of history. Su Shi, in his prolific years, penned thousands of verses, but not all found their way into the archives of song chronicles, like those preserved in the history of song or the accounts of Sima Guang. Some scholars speculate that certain works, perhaps intimate reflections or experimental forms, were lost in the chaos of moving between posts, their pages scattered like autumn leaves in a storm. In the Teahouse, as he sat with his brush poised, one might imagine him gazing into his tea, the steam curling like forgotten memories, pondering lines that never reached the light. Was it the press of daily life, with its endless demands for new compositions, that led to their disappearance? Or perhaps, in a subtle twist of fate, he chose to let some fade, like unsaid words in a conversation, preserving their essence in the air rather than on paper. This enigma adds a layer of intrigue to his legacy, a gentle puzzle that invites endless contemplation, much like the way the teahouse's shadows danced on the walls, hinting at stories unseen through his writings. She bridged the gap between the scholarly elite and the common folk, his words resonating in both courtly halls and humble gatherings, though the teahouse setting kept him grounded in the everyday. His influence extended to literary circles, where his style inspired a generation. He innovated with parallelism and vivid imagery, as in his descriptions of a mountain mist rolling over peaks, evoking the cool dampness on one's skin, or the distant call of a nightingale. The sensory richness of his language, the bitter aftertaste of green tea, the smooth glide of ink across parchment made his works accessible, turning abstract ideas into tangible experiences. In one piece, he might compare the mind's clarity to the first light of dawn, filtering through bamboo blinds, a detail that could transport one to the very moment of its inspiration. As the years wove on, Sushi's life remained a testament to the power of words to soothe and enlighten. He composed during the empire's prosperous Northern Song period, a time when cultural flourishing mirrored the blooming of lotus in summer ponds, their petals unfurling with the same grace as his metaphors. His poetry often celebrated seasonal changes, like the arrival of spring rains that pattered on rooftops, carrying the fresh scent of rebirth. Yet even in these celebrations, a subtle wit emerged, a light-hearted nudge at the impermanence of all things, as if to say that life's ephemera was its greatest charm. Readers found comfort in his verses, which flowed like a lullaby, easing the mind into peaceful reflection. In the tea house, surrounded by the murmur of conversations and the occasional laughter that bubbled like effervescent tea, she continued his craft. The mystery of his lost poems added a poignant depth, a reminder that not all treasures are meant to be found. Much like hidden paths in a misty forest, perhaps those missing works held secrets of his innermost thoughts, fragments that dissolved into the ether, leaving only echoes for future generations to chase. This uncertainty, far from dimming his legacy, enhanced it, inviting scholars to delve deeper into the archives, sifting through yellowed pages and faded ink for any overlooked gem. As the evening deepened in Kaifeng, with the tea house's lanterns casting a golden haze and the aroma of fresh brewed chrysanthemum tea filling the air, she set down his brush, his scroll complete. His life, a harmonious blend of creation and contemplation, stood as a beacon in the Song Dynasty's literary landscape. Yet, as the night whispered its farewells, one could sense the quiet pull toward what lay beyond, where other tales awaited their turn in the unfolding story. In the quiet folds of 11th century Song China, where mist-cloaked hills met the slow curve of rivers, the ancient craft of porcelain making unfolded like a whispered secret, far from the bustling cities. In rural workshops, nestled among bamboo groves and terraced fields, artisans tended to their earthen treasures. The air carried a gentle hush, broken only by the soft sigh of wind through the trees. As these skilled hands shaped clay into vessels of ethereal beauty, it was a world of subtle rhythms, where the day's work began at dawn's first light and ended under a canopy of stars. The mystery of lost kilns weaving through the landscape like unseen threads. The artisans, clad in simple tunics of coarse linen, dyed in earthy tones, moved with a deliberate grace that spoke of years devoted to their art. Their garments, loose and practical, bore the faint imprint of clay dust that settled like fine powder on their sleeves and hems. In the dim glow of early morning, they gathered around the workshops, low-roofed structures of mud and thatch that blended seamlessly into the surrounding hills. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sharp tang of wood smoke as fires were stoked in the great kilns vast. Dome-shaped furnaces built from refractory bricks, their mouths yawning like ancient guardians. One could imagine the process as a dance of elements, where water, fire, and earth converged in harmonious balance. The artisans began by kneading raw clay, sourced from the riverbanks nearby, its cool, slick texture slipping between their fingers like living silk. They hummed low tunes, perhaps soft melodies that echoed the rhythm of their work. As they molded the clay on slow-turning wheels, the air grew thick with the musty aroma of wet soil, punctuated by the occasional crackle of kindling as assistants fed the kilns. These furnaces, some as tall as a man, radiated a gentle warmth that chased away the morning chill, their surfaces etched with faint scorch marks from countless firings. As the day progressed, the workshops came alive with sensory details that soothed the soul. The kilns exhaled plumes of smoke, thin and gray, curling lazily into the sky like breath from a dreaming giant. This smoke carried a woody fragrance, laced with a metallic hint of minerals baking within, creating a haze that softened the sunlight filtering through the trees. Artisans paused to wipe sweat from their brows, their skin dusted with a fine layer of clay particles that glittered subtly in the light, like stars fallen to earth. The sound of tools, gentle taps of wooden mallets shaping forms, the soft scrape of blades trimming edges formed a lullaby of industry, each motion precise and unhurried. Yet beneath this serene facade lay the enigma of the lost kilns, those vanished hearths whose locations have puzzled scholars for centuries. In the annals of Jingdezhen, the famed porcelain capital, archaeological reports from excavations in the 20th century reveal fragments of this forgotten world. These reports, drawn from meticulous digs, uncovering kiln sites buried under layers of soil and time, speak of a network of workshops that once dotted the landscape, their exact positions now shrouded in mystery. One such report describes the discovery of kiln debris in a remote valley, where shards of celadon were hinted at techniques lost to erosion and neglect. The kilns, it seems, were not merely structures, but repositories of knowledge, their secrets guarded by the very earth that concealed them. Consider the unknowns that linger, like shadows at dusk. Why did certain kilns disappear without trace? Perhaps floods from the Changjiang River, swollen with seasonal rains, swept away entire sites, leaving only scattered remnants for future generations to ponder. Or maybe the turmoil of regional conflicts, subtle undercurrents in the Song era's otherwise prosperous times, forced artisans to abandon their workshops, their paths erased by encroaching forests. Jingdezhen's reports note the presence of advanced firing methods, such as the dragon kiln, a long, sloping structure that allowed for controlled temperatures reaching over 1,000 degrees. Yet many such kilns remain unlocated, their blueprints faded like old ink on parchment. In one historical example, excavators unearthed a kiln complex near a tributary of the Yangtze, revealing layers of ash and broken porcelain that spoke of a sudden halt. The artifacts, delicate bowls and vases, glazed in serene blues and greens, suggested a mastery that rivaled imperial courts. But the site offered no clues to its abandonment. Was it a fire that raged unchecked, consuming the structure in a night of unforeseen fury? Or perhaps an economic shift, where demand waned and artisans dispersed like leaves in autumn wind? The mystery deepens with each unearthed piece, each shard a whisper of what once was. The artisans themselves added to the veil of intrigue, their lives intertwined with the kilns in ways that history has only partially preserved. Dressed in their tunics, they worked through the cycles of day and night, their faces illuminated by the kiln's soft, orange glow. The heat enveloped them like a warm embrace, the air heavy with the scent of burning pine and the earthy tang of fusing clay. One might picture them sharing quiet stories as they waited for the firing to complete. Tales of ghosts in the hills, or hidden troves of porcelain, infused with a subtle wit that lightened the labor's weight. The kilns hold their secrets closer than a miser's purse. An artisan might quip, his voice a gentle rumble amid the crackling flames. As evening fell, the workshops grew still, the smoke thinning to mere wisps that danced in the cooling air. The clay dust settled, coating everything in a fine, silken layer that caught the moonlight. In these moments, the mystery of the lost kilns took on a poetic quality, a reminder of impermanence in a world of enduring beauty. Jingdezhen's archaeological findings continue to unravel threads, revealing how these kilns influenced trade routes and cultural exchanges. Yet the core enigma persists. What stories remain untold beneath the soil? Expanding on the sensory tapestry, one can almost feel the texture of the cooled porcelain, smooth as river stones, polished by time, or hear the faint pop of air pockets bursting in the heat. The scent of fresh clay mixed with the acrid undertone of ash created a palette of aromas reports from Jingdezhen describe a kiln site where experimental glazes were tested. Their vibrant hues, emerald greens, and milky whites, evoking the serenity of a moonlit lake. These details paint a picture of innovation lost to the ages, where artisans pushed the boundaries of their craft in isolation. Through it all, the calming rhythm of the work persisted, a balm for the spirit amid life's uncertainties. The lost kilns, with their untold tales, serve as a gentle enigma, inviting reflection rather than alarm. As the night deepens and the workshops fade into silence, one can't help but wonder what other mysteries await discovery, drawing us onward to the next chapter of this ancient tapestry in the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the great Yellow River whispered its ancient secrets to the city walls. The emperor's palace stood as a realm unto itself, a vast expanse of tiled roofs and gilded eaves that seemed to float above the mundane world. It was a place where time moved with the grace of a silk banner in a gentle breeze, and the air carried the faint, sweet perfume of blooming plum trees, mingling with the earthy scent of aged wood. Here in the northern Song dynasty, life unfolded in layers of opulence, a tapestry woven from the finest threads of imperial splendor. The halls of the palace, vast and echoing, were adorned with intricate carvings of dragons and phoenixes, their forms twisting across beams that had been polished to a mirror like sheen. Nobles gathered in these spaces as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows that danced like spirits across the lacquered floors. They arrived in robes of shimmering silk, the fabric whispering against their skin with each measured step, a soft rustle that evoked the sound of leaves in a secluded garden. These garments, dyed in hues of imperial jade and sunset crimson, were embroidered with golden threads depicting scenes of mythical beasts and celestial mountains, each stitch a testament to the artisan's devotion. At the center of it all was the great dining hall, where long tables stretched like rivers of dark ebony, laden with dishes that gleamed under the flicker of oil lamps. The nobles reclined on cushioned stools, their fingers tracing the cool edges of porcelain bowls filled with delicacies from distant provinces. Steamed fish from the Yangtze, its flesh flaking tenderly beneath a glaze of soy and ginger, released an aroma that wove through the air like a spell, warm and inviting. Beside it, braised pheasant marinated in fermented rice wine offered a subtle tang, its juices pooling on plates rimmed with patterns of blooming lotuses. The scent of incense, sandalwood, and aloeswood burned in bronze braziers drifted lazily, curling in thin wisps that teased the senses and lent an air of reverent calm to the proceedings. Conversation among the nobles flowed as smoothly as the wine poured from jade decanters, their voices a low murmur that blended with the distant chime of bells from the palace towers. One elder, his beard as white as the snow on Mount Tai, might remark with a hint of wry amusement on the day's court affairs. his words carrying the weight of years spent in service. "Ah, the emperor's wisdom," he would say, his tone laced with subtle wit, "is like this silk, elegant and enduring, yet ever so light upon the shoulders." The others would nod, their laughter a soft ripple, as servants in simple tunics moved silently, refilling cups with tea brewed from leaves plucked at dawn, its steam rising like dreams in the cool evening air. Beyond the dining hall, the palace gardens offered a respite, a labyrinth of winding paths lined with peonies and chrysanthemums that bloomed in defiant splendor. The air here was alive with the buzz of bees and the occasional trill of a caged songbird, its melody a delicate counterpoint to the rustle of leaves stirred by the wind. Nobles would stroll these paths after meals, their silk robes brushing against the dew-kissed grass, the fabric's cool touch a gentle reminder of the empire's vast wealth. Statues of ancient sages stood sentinel, their stone faces weathered yet serene, gazing out over ponds where lotus flowers floated like forgotten jewels, their petals unfurling with the precision of a poet's verse. Life in the palace was a carefully orchestrated symphony of ritual and luxury, drawn from the annals of Song Dynasty records that chronicled the reigns of emperors like Renzong, who ruled in the mid-11th century. These texts, preserved in the imperial archives, detailed the meticulous preparations for daily ceremonies, where courtiers donned their finest attire and processed through corridors lined with tapestries depicting the empire's triumphs. The silk robes, woven in the workshops of Saju, were not merely garments, but symbols of status, each one requiring months of labor from skilled weavers who worked by the light of oil lamps, their needles moving in rhythmic harmony. Yet amid this splendor, a whisper of mystery lingered, as elusive as the smoke from the incense burners. It was said that deep within the palace vaults, treasures from generations past had vanished without a trace, their disappearance a puzzle that echoed through the halls like a half-forgotten legend. According to the song histories, such as those compiled in the History of Song, certain artifacts, gold seals inscribed with imperial edicts, jade ornaments carved with the faces of long-dead emperors, and scrolls illuminated with scenes of celestial harmony, had been misplaced during the turbulent years of court intrigue. One evening, as the nobles dined, a servant might pause, his eyes darting to the shadows, murmuring of a chest that once held a priceless pearl, said to glow with an inner light like the moon on a clear night. The pearl, gifted from a southern tributary, was rumored to have been spirited away by a shadowy figure in the dead of night, leaving only a faint scent of camphor in its wake. This enigma, untouched by the chaos of battles or the gossip of tea-houses, added a layer of quiet intrigue to the palace's opulent facade, a subtle reminder that even in the emperor's domain, not all could be held secure. The days blended into one another with the same unhurried rhythm. The palace, a world where the sun's warmth filtered through carved screens, casting patterns of light that played across the walls like whispers of the divine. In the emperor's private quarters, screens of painted silk depicted scenes of eternal spring, their colors vibrant yet soft, evoking the feel of a breeze carrying petals from a distant blossom. Here, the ruler himself might contemplate the scrolls of philosophers like Sima Guang, whose writings on governance offered wisdom as enduring as the stone bridges arching over the palace moats. The water below murmured softly, its surface rippling with the occasional leap of a fish, a sound that blended with the distant toll of a bell marking the hour. Nobles, in their silken splendor, found solace in these moments, their lives a dance of privilege and protocol. A young courtier, his robe adorned with embroidery of cranes in flight, might stand by a window, feeling the cool draft from the river beyond, and ponder the empire's expanse. The silk against his skin was a constant, gentle caress, its threads woven with stories of distant silk roads and the caravans that brought spices and gems to Kaifeng's gates. Even the simplest meals carried echoes of this vast network. Rice, perfumed with saffron from the west, its golden hue mirroring the sunset, or fruits preserved in honey, their sweetness lingering on the tongue like a cherished memory. As night deepened, the palace transformed into a realm of shadows and light. Lanterns hung from eaves, casting a warm glow that turned the halls into a mosaic of gold and amber. The air grew heavier with the scent of night-blooming jasmine, its fragrance weaving through the corridors like a secret shared among confidants. Servants moved with practiced grace, their footsteps muffled by thick rugs imported from the borders, each one a testament to the empire's reach. In this hush, the mystery of the lost treasures took on a dreamlike quality, a tale that servants passed in low voices, suggesting that perhaps the artifacts had been hidden away by a loyal guardian, their location known only to the winds that rustled through the eaves. Through it all, the palace remained a sanctuary of refined beauty, its opulence a gentle balm against the world's uncertainties. The song records, with their meticulous accounts of imperial life, painted a picture of harmony and excess, where every detail from the curve of a teacup to the fold of a robe spoke of an era's pinnacle. Yet, as the stars wheeled above Kaifeng's skyline, one could not help but sense the impermanence of it all. The treasures lost serving as a quiet metaphor for the fleeting nature of power. And so, as the night waned and the first light of dawn kissed the horizon, the palace settled into a peaceful repose, its mysteries and splendors waiting for the morrow, a bridge to stories yet untold. In the soft glow of dawn over 11th century Kaifeng, the Teahouse awakens like a whisper in the ancient city's rhythm, its wooden beams creaking gently under the weight of morning mist. Nestled along the bustling lanes near the Imperial Way, this humble establishment stirs to life, where servers in simple tunics of coarse linen move with the grace of a poem unfolding. The air carries the faint, earthy scent of dew-kissed roof tiles, mingling with the first hints of steam rising from clay pots, as if the day itself brews a delicate infusion. The servers rise before the sun fully claims the sky, their movements deliberate and unhurried, a dance honed by years of repetition. Dressed in tunics dyed a muted indigo, the fabric soft against their skin from countless washes in the nearby Bayan River. They step into the dim interior where shadows linger like forgotten dreams. One by one, they light the charcoal braziers, the gentle crackle of embers, a soothing lull that echoes the verses of Sushi, who once wrote of fires that warm the heart as they kindle the dawn. The flames flicker with a warm, golden hue, casting a soft light on the rows of porcelain cups arranged neatly on lacquered shelves, each piece etched with faint floral patterns that speak of quiet elegance. As the braziers glow, water is drawn from earthen jars, cool and clear from the well in the courtyard, its surface rippling like the whispers of a distant stream. The servers pour it into iron kettles, the metal cool at first touch, then warming steadily as heat embraces it. A subtle hiss rises, not harsh, but inviting, like the sigh of wind through bamboo groves, evoking the sensory world of song poets who savored such moments. One server, an elder with hands weathered like ancient scrolls, selects the tea leaves with care, his fingers brushing against the dried green's crisp, aromatic buds from the hills of Zhejiang. Their fragrance, a blend of fresh grass and subtle florals that perfumes the air. He crumbles a few into a bamboo strainer, the leaves releasing a faint, herbal scent that curls upward, wrapping around the room like a comforting embrace. Patrons begin to arrive as the morning deepens, merchants and scholars seeking respite from the city's hum, their footsteps muffled by rush mats laid across the threshold. The servers greet them with a nod, their tunics swaying lightly as they move to prepare the first brews. Water boils now, the kettle's song a low, rhythmic bubble that resonates like the beat of a distant drum, each drop dancing in the steam. The elder server lifts the kettle with steady hands, pouring the hot water over the leaves in a slow, circular motion, the liquid swirling with a translucent glow that captures the light, filtering through paper windows. Aromas intensify earthy notes of roasted grains, mingling with the sweet undertones of chrysanthemum, a sensory tapestry that invites the mind to wander, much as Lai Qingzhao once described in her odes to tea, where the steam rises like mist over mountains, carrying secrets of the soul. With each cup prepared, the servers embody a subtle wit in their efficiency, a quiet humor in the way they anticipate needs without a word. One younger server, his tunic tied neatly at the waist, arranges the cups on a tray of polished wood, the surface smooth and cool under his palms. He carries it to a patron, a weary traveler whose eyes light up at the steam's embrace, and places it down with a gentle clink that harmonizes with the room's tranquil hum. The tea steeps, its color deepening to a rich amber, the warmth seeping through the porcelain to chase away the chill of the early hours. Patrons sip slowly, the liquid's velvety texture coating their tongues, a blend of bitterness and sweetness that lingers like a well-timed verse, reminding one of the song poet's mastery in capturing life's fleeting pleasures. As midday approaches, the tea house fills with a steady murmur, the servers weaving through the crowd like threads in a loom. They refresh the braziers, adding more charcoal with a soft rustle, the heat building anew to maintain the perfect boil. Sensory details abound, the faint tang of smoke in the air, the tactile weight of the kettles as they are lifted, the auditory whisper of leaves unfurling in hot water. One server pauses to grind fresh leaves with a stone mortar. The grinding sound a rhythmic grind that soothes like a lullaby, evoking the unassuming routines that defined song daily life. These moments are steeped in historical accuracy, drawn from the poetic reflections of the era, where everyday acts became metaphors for deeper truths. Yet, amid this orderly flow, a mystery lingers like an unspoken poem, the unrecorded schedules of the tea house. Unlike the imperial archives that meticulously logged celestial events or court ceremonies, the daily rhythms here were passed down through oral tradition, never etched into bamboo slips or silk scrolls. Why were these routines left to fade into the ether, their timings as elusive as the wind? Perhaps it was the song belief in transience, as echoed in She's lines about the impermanence of all things, where the tea cools as quickly as memories dissolve. The servers knew when to boil the water by the sun's arc and the street vendors' calls, yet no ledger captured their exact sequence. This enigma adds a layer of intrigue, a subtle puzzle that invites contemplation, distinct from the broader tapestry of tea house existence. In the afternoon hush, when the sun hangs high and casts a golden veil over Kaifeng, the servers prepare a second wave of brews. They select different leaves now, perhaps a finer variety from Fujian, their aroma sharper and more invigorating, with notes of pine and wildflowers that fill the space. The water is boiled again, its bubbles rising in a lazy cadence, the steam curling around faces like a gentle fog. Patrons lean in, savoring the warmth that spreads from their palms to their core, the tea's flavor evolving with each sip. First, a bold earthiness, then a lingering sweetness that fades like an evening's last light. The servers, in their tunics, now slightly damp from the steam, move with an effortless grace, their subtle wit shining through in small gestures, like adding a twist of ginger to a cup for an ailing patron, a nod to ancient remedies praised in song texts. As shadows lengthen, the routines continue unbroken, each action a thread in the day's fabric. The elder server inspects the leaves once more, his tunic's sleeves rolled back to reveal arms marked by years of labor. The sensory details of his work, a testament to the era's craftsmanship, the sound of ladles dipping into water, the feel of warm porcelain, the sight of steam dancing in the air, all weave together in a calming symphony. Here, in this unassuming corner of Kaifeng, the mystery of those unrecorded schedules deepens. A quiet riddle that perhaps only the poets understood, as if the tea house itself guarded secrets meant for the wind. Evening descends, the tea houses glow softening as lamps are lit, their flames flickering like distant stars. The servers clean the vessels with cloth dampened in cool water, the tactile ritual closing the day as it began. Aromas fade to whispers, leaving behind a sense of peace, much like the closing lines of a song poem where tranquility prevails. Yet, as the last patron departs, one wonders about the morrow, the schedules that remain unwritten, a mystery that lingers in the night air, beckoning toward unseen paths. And so, as the tea house settles into silence, its routines a gentle echo of the past, we turn our thoughts to what follows, where new mysteries await in the shadows of history, in the gentle folds of the 11th century Chinese hills, where mist clung to the earth like a whispered secret. The rhythm of tea sourcing began each dawn. Workers, clad in simple tunics of coarse linen, moved with a quiet grace among the terraced slopes. Their movements were as steady as the distant river's flow, harvesting the tender leaves of Camellia sinensis under a sky that softened from night's ink to pearl, drawing from ancient Song agricultural texts, such as the Nong Zheng Quan Shu fragments that detailed the careful selection of varietals. These laborers embodied the art of sustenance, their hands brushing against dew-kissed foliage that rustled softly, like the sigh of a waking dream. The hills of Zhejiang and Fujian, praised in those old manuscripts for their fertile soils and cool airs, cradled the tea plants in a cradle of fog. Here, the workers' men and women, whose faces bore the quiet lines of enduring labor, bent low, their tunics tied at the waist to allow for ease. The fabric, woven from local hemp, whispered against the leaves as they plucked, each motion deliberate, as if plucking notes from a lute. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of damp soil mingled with the fresh, verdant aroma of the buds, a perfume that lingered like a half-forgotten melody. One might pause, if only for a breath, to feel the cool mist bead on their skin, a soothing veil that muted the world's sharper edges. In those texts, the song scholars spoke of selecting leaves at the precise moment of their prime, when the first flush of spring had infused them with vitality. The workers knew this instinctively, their fingers discerning the perfect buds, those not yet hardened by the sun's gaze. As they worked, the hillsides came alive with subtle sounds, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant call of a mountain bird echoing through the haze, and the occasional rustle of wind through the branches. Like silk being drawn across stone, there was a subtle wit in their task, for nature, ever playful, hid the best leaves among the thorns, rewarding only the most patient harvester with its treasures. Once gathered, the leaves journeyed down winding paths to the tea houses nestled in valley towns, their baskets swaying gently on the workers' backs. The song texts, such as those in the Tiangong Kaiwu compilations, outlined the preparation process with meticulous care, emphasizing the harmony between earth and fire. In shaded sheds near the tea houses, the leaves were spread on bamboo mats, where the air, still carrying the hill's misty essence, allowed them to wither slowly. This initial step, called Shao King in the ancient records, involved a gentle wilting under the soft light filtering through thatched roofs, the leaves releasing their moisture in a process as natural as the ebbing tide. As the leaves lay there, their edges curling inward like thoughts retreating into memory, the workers tended them with a calm vigilance. The air in these sheds grew thick with the scent of emerging florals, hints of jasmine and orchid, though the texts noted that such nuances varied by region. A nod to the land's capricious gifts. One could almost hear the leaves sighing as they dried, a faint, rhythmic sound that blended with the distant murmur of streams. The song farmers, as described in agricultural scrolls, believed in the leaves' inherent wisdom, allowing time to work its quiet magic before the next stage. Firing followed, a process of controlled heat that transformed the raw harvest into something sublime. Using clay stoves fueled by charcoal from the surrounding woods, the workers arranged the leaves in shallow pans, stirring them methodically. The texts from the era, drawing on earlier Tang influences but adapted for song innovations, stressed the importance of even temperatures never too fierce, lest the essence scorch away. As the leaves heated, a subtle steam rose, carrying with it the nutty aroma of roasting grains, intermingled with the fresh green notes that evoked the hills themselves. It was here, in this dance of fire and air, that the tea began to reveal its character, each batch whispering of the soil it sprang from. Yet, amid this orderly process, there lingered a mystery, one that the song texts only hinted at in their cryptic margins. The unrecorded tea blends, while the agricultural manuals detailed standard varietals like the robust Longjing or the delicate Bai Luo Chun. They spoke in veiled terms of secret mixtures, formulas passed down through whispers or lost to the mists of time. Perhaps a clever tea master in a remote tea house had combined leaves from the foggy peaks with wild herbs gathered under the moon, creating a blend that soothed the spirit in ways uncharted by official records. These unrecorded concoctions, born of experimentation in the shadows of imperial oversight, added an element of intrigue to the daily craft, a subtle wit in their elusiveness, as if the tea itself conspired to keep its deepest secrets. In the tea houses, where patrons sought respite from the world's clamor, these blends might have been served in quiet corners, their flavors a puzzle to the tongue earthy depths, giving way to unexpected floral bursts, or a lingering bitterness that resolved into sweet tranquility. The song texts, while precise on cultivation, left such innovations to oral tradition, preserving the mystery as a guardian of cultural heritage. One could imagine a worker, after a long day in the hills, experimenting by the firelight, mixing a handful of leaves with petals from a nearby wildflower, only to find a new harmony that no scribe had captured. As the preparation continued, the leaves were rolled and shaped, their forms pressed into needles or curls, as per the text's instructions. This step, often done by hand to maintain the leaves' integrity, required a steady rhythm, the workers' fingers moving like the gentle waves of a lake, the air filled with the soft crinkle of foliage being molded, a sound as comforting as rain on a roof, while the scents evolved, now more robust, with undertones of toasted nuts and fresh rain. Historical examples from the Song era, such as the accounts in Cha Jing derivatives, noted how regional variations in water and soil influenced these outcomes, turning each batch into a unique testament to its origin. Through it all, the process unfolded with a lullaby, like serenity, the workers' tunics swaying in the breeze as they worked, their breaths synchronized with the natural world. The mist that had cloaked the hills now hovered in the teahouse sheds, a reminder of the journey from earth to cup. Subtle wit emerged in the way the tea resisted full revelation, much like the hills themselves, ever veiled in fog, inviting contemplation rather than certainty. As evening draped the valleys in softer hues, the prepared tea leaves were packed into porcelain jars, ready for the teahouse's brewers. Yet even here, the mystery persisted. Those unrecorded blends, perhaps born from a worker's intuition, or a hidden recipe scrawled on fading parchment, continued to intrigue. In the song texts, such enigmas were treated with a detached respect, acknowledging that not all knowledge could be confined to ink and paper. And so, as the stars began to prick the night sky, the story of tea sourcing and preparation in those ancient hills gently fades, like the last tendrils of mist at dawn, leading us toward the next whisper of history. In the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the ancient Bayan River whispered secrets through willow-lined banks, a tea house stood as a haven of gentle repose. Its wooden beams, worn smooth by the passage of countless evenings, cradled the soft glow of lantern light that danced upon the faces of patrons. Here, amid the fragrant steam of freshly brewed Longjing tea, the world paused, and the air filled with the subtle art of entertainment. A tapestry woven from voices and strings that soothed the soul like a lullaby carried on the breeze. The performers arrived as dusk settled, their figures emerging from the shadows like figures from a forgotten dream, dressed in flowing robes of silk and brocade, embroidered with delicate patterns of cranes and plum blossoms. They moved with a grace that seemed to echo the rhythms of nature itself. These artists, often scholars or courtesans versed in the classics, took their places on low platforms at the teahouse's center, where patrons reclined on cushions or sat at low tables, cradling warm cups that released tendrils of earthy aroma into the air. A young woman, her robe a cascade of muted jade green, adjusted the strings of her pipa lute, her fingers brushing the instrument with the tenderness of a mother soothing a child. As she plucked the first notes, a soft melody unfurled, reminiscent of the poems of Sushi, who once wrote of moonlight on water, its surface rippling like the strings under her touch. The songs they sang were drawn from the rich well of song poetry, verses that painted pictures of longing and beauty without the weight of the world's hardships. One performer, a man with a voice like the gentle rustle of bamboo leaves, recited lines from Wang Anshi's works, adapting them into lyrical ballads that filled the room. The river flows east, carrying away the sorrows of men, he crooned, his tone laced with subtle wit, as if sharing a private jest with the tea itself. The patrons listened, their eyes half closed in contentment. The soft applause that followed each verse, like the patter of rain on roof tiles, brief and appreciative, never overwhelming the tranquility. Sensory details wove through the performances, creating an atmosphere where time seemed to slow. The lute's strums resonated deeply, each note a warm vibration that mingled with the scent of jasmine blossoms infused in the tea, while the faint clink of porcelain cups provided a rhythmic counterpoint. A storyteller might intersperse the music with tales of heroic figures from the classics, her voice rising and falling like the Yangtze's waves, drawing listeners into a world where every word carried the essence of chrysanthemum wine and autumn winds. The air grew thick with the mingled perfumes of sandalwood incense and the patrons' robes, a subtle blend that evoked the court's elegance without its formality. In these moments, the tea house transformed into a living poem, where the performers gestures a tilt of the head, a flutter of sleeves added layers of meaning, as if the very air were alive with unspoken stories. Yet beneath this serene surface lay a quiet mystery, one that added a whisper of intrigue to the evenings without disturbing their peace. The performance scripts, those meticulously crafted scrolls of lyrics and notations passed down through generations, had begun to vanish like mist at dawn. No one could say precisely when or how, but whispers among the performers spoke of scripts spirited away in the night, perhaps by rivals, or forgotten in the chaos of shifting dynastic winds. One evening, as the lute player paused between songs, she might glance at her worn case, its contents lighter than before, and offer a faint smile, her voice carrying a subtle wit. Ah, the verses that dance away, like fireflies in the dark, leaving only their glow in our memories. Patrons pondered this in silence, imagining the lost words as echoes of a greater cultural tapestry, preserved only in the hearts of those who heard them. This enigma, untouched by the daily grind of merchant life or the distant hum of kilns, lent a delicate allure to the tea houses, reminding all that some beauties were meant to fade, like the final notes of a song drifting into the night. As the performances continued, the variety of acts unfolded with the seasons. In spring, when the city bloomed with peach flowers, duets of singers and instrumentalists would perform pieces inspired by Aoyang Xiu's poetry, their harmonies evoking the freshness of new growth. The lute would strum in patterns that mimicked the trickle of a stream, while a second performer on the flute added airy trills, like birdsong, filtering through the teahouse's lattice windows. The patrons, merchants and scholars alike, would lean in, their faces illuminated by the soft flicker of oil lamps, the warmth of the tea seeping into their bones as they savored the moment. Subtle wit infused the lyrics, with lines that playfully twisted classical references, turning a serious ode into a light-hearted nod to the absurdities of life, all delivered in a tone that coaxed smiles rather than laughter. Summer brought a shift, with performances that captured the languid heat of Kaifeng's nights. Performers in lighter robes, their fabrics whispering against the air, would sing of river journeys and distant mountains, drawing from the works of Mei Yeachin. The lute strings produced deeper, resonant tones, like the hum of cicadas in the distance, while the soft applause came as gentle taps, akin to leaves falling on a still pond. One might describe a scene where a performer, her voice a soothing balm, recounted a poetic tale of a traveler's rest, the words wrapping around the listeners like the cool breeze from a handheld fan. The mystery of the lost scripts lingered here too, as if the absent pages held secrets of those sultry evenings, their disappearance a puzzle that added a layer of quiet fascination, never overshadowing the present joy. Autumn's chill infused the tea houses with a cozy intimacy, where performers gathered closer to the hearths. Robes of deeper hues, embroidered with maple leaves, rustled as they moved, and the lute's strums took on a melancholic quality, echoing like King Zhao's verses of seasonal change. The west wind blows, and the wild geese cry. A singer might intone, her words carrying the faint scent of roasting chestnuts from nearby stalls. Sensory details abounded, the warm press of steam from tea bowls, the faint creak of wooden floors under shifting feet, and the occasional murmur of approval that blended seamlessly with the music. Here, the lost scripts became a subtle thread, perhaps imagined as leaves carried away by the wind, their stories persisting in the performers' improvisations, a testament to the enduring spirit of song culture. Winter evenings were the most enchanting, with snow dusting the tea house roofs and performers wrapping their robes tighter against the cold. They sang of enduring warmth, drawing from She's reflections on snow and solitude, their voices a gentle counter to the outer chill. The lute's notes, soft and deliberate, evoked the crackle of a fire, while the applause was mere whispers, like snowflakes settling. In these gatherings, the mystery deepened, as tales circulated of a legendary script that vanished during a harsh winter, its contents perhaps a masterpiece of poetic fusion lost to time, yet inspiring new creations that kept the tradition alive. Through it all, the tea house remained a sanctuary, where entertainment was not mere diversion, but a bridge to the poetic soul of the song era. Performers, with their robes and melodies, wove a web of sensory delight that lingered long after the last note faded. As the night drew to a close, patrons would rise, their steps light, carrying the echoes of lute strums and soft applause into the streets, where the Bayan River's murmur seemed to continue the song. And so, as this chapter of Kaifeng's nights whispers to an end, one might glance toward the horizon, where the next tale awaits, as ephemeral and enchanting as the lost scripts themselves. In the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the city's ancient streets wound like gentle rivers through a tapestry of tiled roofs and willow trees, a modest tea house stood as a haven of quiet connection. The air carried the faint, earthy aroma of freshly brewed tea leaves, mingling with the subtle scent of rain, soaked stone from the courtyard beyond. Patrons, clad in simple tunics of linen and silk, gathered around low wooden tables, their movements unhurried as they sought solace in the ritual of sharing stories. Here, amid the soft glow of lantern light, community bonds wove themselves like invisible threads, binding strangers into a web of unwritten friendships that history seldom recorded. The tea house itself was a humble structure, its walls adorned with scrolls depicting scenes from classical poetry, their ink faded yet evocative. As evening descended, the first patrons arrived, their tunics dyed in muted shades of blue and gray, rustling softly with each step. These were merchants and artisans, scholars and travelers, drawn together by the promise of warm tea and conversation. A server, his own tunic tied neatly at the waist, moved gracefully between tables, pouring from earthenware pots that released wisps of steam into the cooling air. The liquid, a delicate green tea harvested from the hills of Zhejiang, as noted in song records, flowed smoothly, its bitterness tempered by a hint of sweetness that lingered on the tongue. One by one, the patrons settled in, their voices rising in a gentle murmur that filled the space like a lullaby. An elderly storyteller, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of travel, leaned forward to recount tales of distant markets and clever trades, his words punctuated by the occasional clink of porcelain cups against wooden surfaces. The sound was soothing, a rhythmic counterpoint to the soft laughter that followed his witty observations about the follies of city life. In these cups, he might say with a subtle smile, we find not just tea, but the echoes of journeys untold. His audience nodded, their eyes crinkling in amusement as they sipped and shared their own fragments of life. Among them sat a young scribe, his tunic embroidered with faint patterns of bamboo, who listened intently while tracing invisible lines on the table with his finger. He had come from the outskirts of Kaifeng, where the song Dynasties' flourishing trade routes brought goods and gossip alike. As he spoke of a recent harvest festival, his words painted pictures of golden fields and communal feasts, drawing others into the narrative. The mystery of unwritten friendships lay in these exchanges. For though no official ledger recorded their meetings, the bonds formed here endured in memory alone, in song texts like the Donjing Menghualu. Such gatherings were celebrated as the lifeblood of urban society. Yet, they often went unchronicled, leaving behind only the subtle imprint of shared moments. The air grew thicker with the scent of jasmine blossoms infused in the tea, a practice popularized during the reign of Emperor Renzong. As patrons leaned closer to one another, a merchant in a tunic of courser weave shared stories of river barges laden with silk, his voice carrying a rhythmic cadence that evoked the lapping of water against hulls. Soft laughter erupted when he described a humorous mishap with a stubborn mule, the sound blending with the gentle clatter of cups being refilled, each detail, from the warmth of the ceramic against one's palms to the faint herbal aftertaste, wove a sensory tapestry that enveloped the room. In one corner, a pair of friends, perhaps scholars from the Imperial Academy, though far removed from palace intrigues, exchanged verses from Lai Bai's poetry, their tunics brushing against the bench as they gestured animatedly. The mystery deepened here, for these friendships, forged over cups of tea, often dissolved like mist at dawn, leaving no trace in the annals of history. Song dynasty records, such as those in the Qingming Sheng Tu scroll, depicted such scenes indirectly, showing tea houses as vibrant hubs where social ties blossomed without formal acknowledgement. It was a quiet enigma. How could bonds so profound remain unwritten, preserved only in the hearts of those who partook? As the evening wore on, the tea house filled with more arrivals, each in their unassuming tunics, carrying the day's weariness like a light cloak. The server returned with a fresh pot, the steam rising in lazy spirals that caught the lantern light, casting a warm glow over the faces gathered around. Conversations meandered like the city's canals, touching on the latest tea varieties from Fujian, or the wisdom of ancient proverbs. A woman, her tunic adorned with subtle knots, spoke of her family's herb garden, her words laced with a subtle wit that drew chuckles without overt humor. Tea, like friendship, she mused, reveals its depth only after the first sip. The sensory details of the scene were profound, yet understated. The cool touch of the evening breeze filtering through the open windows, carrying hints of night-blooming flowers, the faint creak of bamboo stools as patrons shifted, the occasional sigh of contentment as another story unfolded. In these moments, the community bonds of Kaifeng's tea houses mirrored the song Dynasty's emphasis on harmony and social cohesion, as documented in works like Sima Guang's Zijai Tongjian. Yet, the unwritten mystery persisted: friendships that formed in the shadows of these gatherings, unrecorded and ephemeral, much like the fleeting aroma of the tea itself. One patron, a traveler with a tunic dusted from the roads, shared tales of distant provinces, his voice a calming rhythm that lulled the listeners into a state of peaceful reflection. He spoke of mountain paths where tea leaves were picked at dawn, and how each leaf held the essence of the earth from which it sprang. His words evoked the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, a sound that seemed to echo in the tea house itself. Others added their own layers, describing the clinking of cups as a form of silent agreement, a way to affirm the stories without interruption. As midnight approached, the conversation softened, the patrons lingering over their final sips. The mystery of these unwritten friendships revealed itself in the quiet farewells, where nods and smiles spoke volumes that no scribe could capture. In song records, such as the accounts of daily life in Kaifeng, tea houses were places of respite, free from the rigid structures of court or commerce. Here, bonds were not forged in contracts or edicts, but in the shared warmth of a cup, a testament to the human need for connection that transcended the written word. Yet even in this calm, there were whispers of the era's undercurrents, handled with a detached observation. The song Dynasty's prosperity brought not only stories of abundance, but also the subtle strains of uncertainty. Though the tea house remained a sanctuary, patrons spoke indirectly of changing times, their words focusing on the consequences rather than the details, like the way a single rain could alter the tea's flavor for seasons to come. As the last cups were drained, the tea house emptied slowly, each patron carrying away a piece of the evening's essence. The mystery lingered, an unwritten legacy of friendships that shaped lives without leaving a mark on paper. In the quiet that followed, one could almost hear the faint echo of soft laughter, a bridge to the stories yet to be shared. And so, as the night deepened, the scene faded gently, paving the way for new gatherings and the timeless rhythm of community in Kaifeng's tea houses. In the soft glow of lanterns that flickered like fireflies in the twilight of an 11th century Song Dynasty evening, the tea house stood as a sanctuary of whispers and warmth. Nestled along a winding street in Kaifeng, its wooden beams creaked gently under the weight of history, inviting weary souls to pause and partake in the ancient art of healing through tea. Here, amid the murmur of patrons and the faint rustle of silk robes, servers moved with the grace of autumn leaves, their simple tunics of hemp and cotton dyed in earthy hues, sleeves rolled to reveal steady hands that brewed elixirs drawn from the wisdom of old medical scrolls. These servers, often humble folk trained in the ways of the Benkao Tujing and other revered texts by scholars like Sushi, embodied a quiet dedication to restoring balance. Picture them in the dim light, their tunics tied loosely at the waist, as they selected from rows of earthenware jars filled with dried herbs, ginseng roots curled like ancient script, chrysanthemum petals soft as whispers, and goji berries plump with promise. With a measured pour of water heated over charcoal braziers, they coaxed steam into the air, where it rose in delicate tendrils, carrying the earthy aroma of roasted leaves mingled with the sharp, invigorating scent of peppermint and licorice. The air grew thick with these fragrances, a soothing blanket that wrapped around visitors, easing the tensions of a day spent in the bustling markets or scholarly debates. In this era, tea houses were more than mere gathering spots. They were extensions of the imperial pharmacopoeia, where the principles of song medical texts guided every infusion, drawing from the Huangdi Niqing's emphasis on harmony between yin and yang. Servers crafted teas to address the body's subtle imbalances. A patron complaining of a restless spirit might receive a brew of jasmine and honeysuckle, its golden liquid steaming gently in a porcelain cup, the floral notes dancing on the tongue like a soft melody, calming the mind without overwhelming the senses. The process was ritualistic, almost meditative. A server would crush fresh ginger with a wooden pestle, releasing a spicy warmth that filled the room, then blend it with green tea leaves, their verdant hue evoking the misty hills of southern China. As the mixture steeped, the steam curled upward, carrying hints of citrus and earth, a sensory embrace that promised renewal. Yet, amid this tranquility, there lingered a subtle mystery, one that whispered through the tea house like a forgotten lullaby. The lost recipes of the great tea masters, passed down through generations, but vanishing like morning fog, held secrets that even the most learned physicians could only speculate upon. In the song texts, such as the Dei Benkao, references to potent blends for longevity and vitality appeared in cryptic verses, their exact formulations guarded jealously, and then inexplicably erased from history. One tale spoke of a server in a tunic embroidered with simple bamboo motifs, who brewed a tea from rare orchid roots and powdered pearl, said to mend the frailest hearts. But after a fire swept through a neighboring tea house, the recipe vanished, leaving only echoes in the steam and the faint, sweet aroma that patrons chased in their dreams. This enigma added a layer of gentle intrigue, a subtle wit in the way the past teased the present, reminding all that some knowledge slips away like sand through fingers. Yet its essence endures in the ritual itself. The servers, with their unassuming demeanor, transformed the tea house into a living pharmacopoeia. They drew upon the taping Human Heji Jufeng, a compendium of remedies compiled under Emperor Renzong, to mix teas that targeted specific ailments. For those plagued by the chill of winter winds, a brew of cinnamon bark and aged pu-er tea would be prepared, its rich, malty fragrance warming the air like a hearthside fire, the spice tingling on the lips with a comforting heat. Sensory details abounded. The soft clink of ladles against bowls, the visual tapestry of herbs laid out like a painter's palette, and the tactile pleasure of holding a warmed cup, its surface smooth and slightly rough where the potter's hand had shaped it. Each preparation was a dance of precision, the server pausing to inhale the rising vapors, ensuring the balance was just right, their movements fluid and unhurried, as if time itself bent to the rhythm of the brew. In these moments, the tea house became a bridge between the mundane and the mystical, where health practices wove together the threads of daily life and ancient lore. Patrons, seated on low stools cushioned with woven mats, would close their eyes as they sipped, the liquid sliding down like a gentle stream, carrying with it the nutty undertones of roasted barley or the subtle bitterness of dandelion that hinted at deeper restoration. The air, heavy with the herbaceous steam, created a cocoon of calm, where the outside world's clamor faded into a distant hum. Subtle wit emerged in the way servers shared old proverbs, like a cup of tea chases away 1,000 worries. Their voices low and melodic, infusing the space with a light-hearted wisdom that never quite revealed all its secrets. Yet not all tales ended in perfect harmony. The song era, with its advancements in medicine, also bore witness to the impermanence of knowledge. The mystery of lost recipes deepened when storms or neglect claimed ancient manuscripts, leaving gaps in the lineage of healing arts. One such recipe, perhaps noted in the Benkao Gangmu's precursors, involved a blend of mulberry leaves and wild rose hips, intended to soothe inflamed lungs during the hazy pollen seasons. Its aroma, a delicate fusion of fruity sweetness and green freshness, was said to have once filled tea houses like a summer breeze. But now it existed only in fragments of memory, a puzzle for modern seekers to piece together. This loss, handled with a detached tone, spoke of consequences rather than sorrow, the fading of a path that once led to vitality. Now, a gentle reminder of how even the most cherished practices could slip into obscurity. As the evening deepened, the servers continued their work, their tunics now dappled with a faint sheen of steam, their faces serene in the lantern light. They might add a twist of innovation, drawing from oral traditions not captured in texts, like incorporating dew-collected mint for an extra layer of cool refreshment, its menthol zing cutting through the heavier scents. The sensory world of the tea house was rich and layered, the visual of steam swirling like ethereal dancers, the auditory hush broken only by the occasional pour of liquid, the taste of each sip evolving from sharp to smooth, and the overall touch of warmth that permeated the soul. In this haven, health was not merely treated, but celebrated, each cup a testament to the Song Dynasty's reverence for nature's bounty. The mystery of those lost recipes, with their elusive promises, added a poetic depth, a subtle nod to the wit of fate that guards some secrets for eternity. As the last patrons departed, the tea house settled into quietude, the air still fragrant with lingering aromas, ready to welcome the morrow's seekers. And so, from this serene interlude, we turn our thoughts to the broader tapestry of song life, where such practices intertwined with the flow of history, inviting reflection on what lies ahead. In the hushed glow of an autumn evening in 11th century Kaifeng, the tea house stood as a sanctuary amid the city's gentle rhythm. its wooden beams whispering secrets of time-worn rituals. Lanterns flickered softly against paper windows, casting warm shadows over patrons who gathered not just for the comfort of tea, but for the quiet reverence that infused every sip. Here, in the heart of the Song Dynasty, the air carried the faint, earthy scent of brewing leaves, mingled with wisps of incense that curled like lazy spirits toward the rafters. Men and women in simple tunics of linen and silk paused at the threshold, their movements deliberate, as if entering a temple rather than a modest establishment along the bustling lanes. These patrons, scholars and artisans alike, arrived with a sense of quiet purpose, their tunics adorned with subtle embroidery that spoke of modest means and deeper devotions. Before the first cup was poured, they would bow slightly, hands clasped in prayer, murmuring soft chants that blended with the ambient hum of the teahouse. The words were ancient, drawn from Buddhist sutras or Taoist verses preserved in scrolls like those in the song records of the era, where tea was not merely a beverage, but a bridge to the divine. One might hear the gentle repetition of Amitabha, the chant floating like a feather on the breeze, as fingers traced invisible patterns in the air, invoking protection and clarity. The ritual began with the lighting of incense, its smoke rising in delicate spirals, carrying prayers upward to mingle with the heavens. In this space, the tea house became a canvas for these unwritten customs, practices passed down through generations, yet rarely inscribed in the official annals. Historians like Sima Guang, in his comprehensive mirror for aid in government, noted the growing popularity of tea houses as places of reflection. But he scarcely touched upon the subtle rites that unfolded within. Patrons would kneel briefly on woven mats, their tunics brushing against the cool stone floors, as they offered a pinch of tea leaves to unseen forces, a gesture as old as the dynasty itself. The mystery lay in these omissions, the rituals that evaded the ink of scribes, preserved only in the collective memory of those who partook. Perhaps it was a nod to the Taoist ideal of Wu Wei, the art of effortless action, where the prayer before tea was not commanded, but felt, a spontaneous communion with the natural world. As the incense burned, its woody aroma, frankincense, blended with local resins, filled the room, wrapping around the senses like a warm embrace. The soft chants continued, voices low and harmonious, akin to the rustle of bamboo in a distant garden, creating a lull that eased the mind into tranquility. One patron, a middle-aged scribe with ink-stained fingers, might close his eyes and visualize the tea's journey from the misty hills of Sichuan, as described in the treatise on tea by Kai Xiang, a song official who documented the leaves' cultivation with poetic precision. In his hands, the cup became a vessel for devotion, the steam rising like exhaled breaths of the ancestors, carrying away the day's burdens. Yet, amid this serenity, there lingered an undercurrent of enigma, the unwritten rituals that scholars whispered about in corners. These were not the grand ceremonies of temples, but intimate acts like the silent pouring of water over tea leaves in a specific pattern, mimicking the flow of rivers in ancient geomancy texts. No record from the song archives, such as those compiled by Fan Zhongyan, fully captured this. Instead, it remained a quiet puzzle, a thread of tradition that bound the living to the unseen. Perhaps it stemmed from folk beliefs in tea as a purifying force, a drink that could ward off malevolent spirits, as hinted in tales from the Yijian Zhai collection. The patrons, in their tunics of muted blues and grays, embodied this mystery, their prayers a tapestry of personal faith woven into the fabric of daily life. The tea itself was prepared with meticulous care, the water heated over charcoal braziers that glowed like embers in a dream. As the leaves steeped, the air grew rich with their fragrance hints of orchid and chestnut, evoking the harvest fields beyond Kaifeng's walls. One could almost taste the ritual in the steam, feel it in the warmth that spread through the fingers holding the cup. Patrons would sip slowly, their eyes half closed, allowing the liquid to unfold its story on the tongue, a sensory echo of the prayers offered moments before. In the song records, such as the Wulin Jiashi by Zhu Mai, tea houses were described as places where the mundane met the mystical. Yet the exact nature of these pre-tea devotions remained elusive, adding to their allure. As evening deepened, more patrons arrived, their tunics rustling softly against the benches, each one carrying a fragment of the ritual's mystery. A young woman, perhaps a poet's daughter, might trace a symbol on the table with her fingertip before drinking, a gesture drawn from oral traditions not found in the imperial histories. The soft chants persisted, a gentle undercurrent like the murmur of a stream, punctuated only by the occasional clink of porcelain. Incense wisps danced in the lamplight, their scent mingling with the tea's earthy notes, creating an atmosphere that soothed the soul and invited reflection. This was the essence of the tea house's religious practice. Not overt worship, but a seamless integration of the sacred into the everyday, as if every leaf and every breath held a hidden scripture. Historical accounts from the period, like those in the Song Shi, offer glimpses of how tea consumption evolved into a spiritual act, influenced by Chan Buddhist monks who saw in it a path to enlightenment. Yet the unwritten elements, those personal invocations whispered before the first sip, remained a guarded secret, passed from mentor to disciple in the shadows of formality. One might imagine a patron pausing to align his cup with the compass points, drawing on geomantic principles from the Book of Changes. Though such details were seldom recorded, the mystery deepened with each gathering, a subtle wit in the way these rituals eluded documentation, as if the spirits themselves preferred anonymity. In the quiet interludes, the tea house's ambience enveloped all, the air heavy with the promise of peace. Sensory details abounded, the cool touch of ceramic against lips, the faint bitterness of the tea yielding to a sweet aftertaste, the distant sound of rain on tiled roofs. Patrons in their tunics sat in contemplation, their prayers a soft melody that wove through the space, reminding all that in Kaifeng's tea houses the divine was ever present, if only one knew how to listen. These practices, rooted in the Song Dynasty's rich tapestry, offered a gentle respite from the world's clamor, a lullaby of sorts for weary hearts. As the night wore on, the rituals continued, each act a thread in an unseen web. The mystery of these unwritten customs, perhaps born from the era's blend of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, lingered like the last traces of incense, inviting curiosity without demand. In this way, the tea house stood as a timeless haven, where faith and flavor intertwined in perfect harmony. And as the patrons departed, cups emptied and spirits lifted, one could sense the subtle transition to other tales, where the echoes of Kaifeng's rhythms would carry onward. In the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the Song Dynasty's rhythms unfolded like a gentle river, tea houses emerged as pockets of quiet amid the city's hum. Lanterns cast a soft glow on wooden beams, and the air carried whispers of steam rising from earthenware pots. Here, amidst the murmur of patrons and the faint scent of jasmine leaves, children moved like shadows, their small forms draped in simple tunics of coarse linen. These young helpers, often no more than 8 or 9 summers old, played roles that wove through the fabric of daily tea house life, their tasks a blend of necessity and subtle grace. Their tunics, hemmed just above the knee for ease of movement, were dyed in muted earth tones, faded blues and greens that echoed the riverbanks beyond the city walls. These garments, practical and unadorned, allowed the children to dart between tables without hindrance, their bare feet padding softly on the rush-strewn floors. One could imagine the fabric brushing against their skin, a light caress like the breeze off the yellow river, as they balanced trays of delicate porcelain cups. The tea they served, brewed from leaves sourced from the southern hills, splashed ever so gently into bowls, the sound a soft murmur like distant rain on tiled roofs. Each pour was precise, a ritual passed down through generations, yet performed with the innocence of youth. In historical accounts from Song social records, such as those preserved in the writings of Sima Guang's comprehensive mirror, children in tea houses were often the unseen pillars of operation. They were not mere servants, but apprentices in a trade that sustained family livelihoods. A child might begin their day by stoking the charcoal braziers, their small hands coaxing flames to life with a whisper of breath, the warmth radiating like a mother's embrace. As the morning light filtered through paper windows, they would prepare the tea leaves, sorting them with fingers that moved as if in a dream, the earthy aroma mingling with the faint spice of cinnamon wafting from nearby stalls. Serving tea was their most visible duty, a task that demanded both speed and serenity. Picture a boy in his tunic, his hair tied back with a simple cord, approaching a table where scholars debated poetry. He poured with a steady hand, the liquid surface rippling just once before settling. A splash so subtle it seemed to echo the quiet lapping of water against Kaifeng's docks. The patrons, merchants, and officials alike barely glanced up, yet their nods of approval spoke volumes. These children learned early the art of discretion. Their soft footsteps, a melody that blended into the Teahouse's symphony, the clink of cups, the low hum of conversation, the occasional rustle of silk robes shifting in wooden chairs. Yet beyond these documented roles, a gentle mystery lingered in the air, like mist over the morning fields. Song records, meticulous as they were, often omitted the finer, unrecorded tasks that children undertook, leaving gaps that invited quiet speculation. Perhaps they whispered messages between patrons, their innocent faces a veil for discreet exchanges. Or maybe they tended to hidden corners of the tea house, polishing artifacts that held stories untold. One might ponder if these young ones gathered herbs for secret remedies, their small tunics concealing pouches of leaves not listed in official ledgers. The mystery lay not in grand conspiracies, but in the everyday nuances, the subtle ways they maintained harmony in a world of adults. It was as if the children themselves were keepers of unspoken traditions, their actions a faint echo of ancient customs that slipped through the scribe's quills. As evening descended, the children's roles shifted with the light. They might refill lanterns, their fingers tracing the warm glass as wicks flickered to life, casting shadows that danced like fireflies on the walls. The scent of spent tea leaves mingled with the cooling air, a calming blend that soothed the senses. In these moments, their tunics, now dusted with the day's residue, seemed to glow in the dim light, a testament to their quiet endurance. Historical examples from the era, drawn from the Song Shi and other chronicles, note how such children were integral to the tea house economy, their labor supporting the vibrant social fabric of Kaifeng. Yet the unrecorded aspects added a layer of intrigue, a whisper of what might have been. Perhaps they crafted simple toys from leftover materials, or shared folk tales in hushed tones to weary travelers, tasks that left no trace in the annals, but lingered in the collective memory. The tea house air was alive with sensory details that enveloped these young helpers. The steam from freshly poured tea rose in delicate tendrils, carrying the bitter-sweet scent that evoked the hills where the leaves were harvested. One could almost feel the warmth of the cups they handled, the porcelain smooth under their fingertips, a contrast to the cool evening breeze slipping through the doorways. Their footsteps, soft and rhythmic, created a lullaby like cadence, each step a gentle reminder of the tea house's heartbeat. Occasionally, a patron's sleeve might brush against a child's tunic, releasing a faint whiff of ink and parchment, a subtle wit in the way these encounters unfolded without disruption in the writings of scholars like Fan Zhongyan, who chronicled the era's social dynamics. Children in such settings were seen as extensions of the family business, their roles evolving with age and skill. A girl, for instance, might arrange flower stems in vases, her movements deliberate and graceful, the petals' fragrance mingling with the tea's aroma to create a serene atmosphere. The splash of water as she rinsed cups echoed faintly, like a stream in the distance, drawing patrons into a state of peaceful reflection. These tasks, while practical, carried an understated elegance, a wit in their efficiency that belied the children's youth. Yet the mystery of those unrecorded duties persisted, a calming enigma that invited contemplation. Perhaps the children maintained small gardens behind the tea houses, nurturing herbs that flavored the teas, their small tunics stained with soil that spoke of hidden labors. Or maybe they memorized patterns of customer preferences, anticipating needs before they arose. A subtle dance of intuition, not captured in formal records. This uncertainty added a layer of depth to their presence, like the faint outline of mountains on the horizon, visible yet undefined. As the night deepened, the children's shifts waned, their tunics settling like fallen leaves. They might pause for a moment, sharing a quiet laugh over a simple meal of steamed buns, the steam rising softly into the air. The tea house, now quieter, held the echoes of their day's work, the residual warmth of braziers, the lingering scent of brewed leaves, the soft imprint of their footsteps on the floor. In these final hours, one could sense the transition, the way their roles intertwined with the larger tapestry of song life, a gentle reminder that even the smallest figures shaped the world around them. Through it all, the children's contributions remained a source of subtle wonder, their unrecorded tasks a mystery that softened the edges of history. As the lanterns dimmed and the tea house prepared for rest, the scene faded like a dream, leaving space for other stories to unfold in the quiet corners of Kaifeng. In the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the Bayan River whispered its endless song under willow branches, the tea houses stood as quiet sanctuaries amid the city's gentle hum. Lanterns hung low, their soft glow casting warm shadows on walls of aged wood, inviting weary souls to linger. Here, in these humble halls of the Song Dynasty, furniture and decor wove a tapestry of everyday elegance, each piece a whisper from a bygone era, polished by time and the subtle patina of countless tea gatherings. The wooden tables, crafted from sturdy cedar and oak sourced from the distant hills, formed the backbone of these spaces. Each table was a masterpiece of simplicity, its surface worn smooth by the touch of many hands, etched with faint tea stains that bloomed like autumn leaves. Imagine the soft creak of a table leg settling under the weight of porcelain cups, a sound as comforting as a distant flute in the evening breeze. These tables stood low and broad, designed for intimate circles where friends might lean in close, their edges rounded not by the carver's chisel alone, but by years of accidental bumps and careful polishing. The wood grain flowed in elegant waves, a natural artistry that spoke of forests long felled. And if one listened closely, the faint scent of resin lingered, mingling with the earthy aroma of steeped leaves. Servers moved through the tea house with a grace that seemed almost dreamlike, their tunics of simple linen flowing like river currents, dyed in muted shades of indigo and gray. These garments wrapped around their forms with a looseness that allowed for effortless motion, the fabric whispering against the air as they arranged the tables. One might picture a server, perhaps a young woman with a steady gaze, adjusting the placement of a low stool with a gentle push, her fingers leaving faint traces on the polished surface. The tunics, fastened with cloth belts tied in neat knots, carried the faint scent of laundry dried in the sun, a subtle reminder of the ordinary lives beyond the tea house doors. As she aligned the tables in neat rows or clusters, the wood emitted a soft groan, not harsh, but melodic, like the settling of an old house at dusk. These servers worked with quiet precision, their movements a dance of utility and poise, ensuring that each table stood just so, ready for the placement of trays laden with bowls and pots. Decorations adorned the tea houses in ways that evoked a sense of timeless harmony, drawing from the song Dynasty's reverence for balance and nature. Screens of bamboo latticework divided the space, their thin slats painted with delicate motifs of cranes and plum blossoms, the ink fading ever so slightly into the weave of the material. These screens, lightweight and portable, could be shifted to create private nooks or open expanses, their edges frayed from frequent handling, carrying the whisper of silk tassels that dangled like forgotten dreams. On the walls, simple scrolls hung, unrolled to reveal brushwork of mountains and mist, the paper yellowed with age and speckled with the occasional tea droplet that had escaped a careless pour. The air carried a hush, punctuated by the faint rustle of these decorations as a breeze slipped through the latticed windows, bringing with it the distant scent of rain-washed streets. Furniture extended beyond tables to include stools and benches, each piece hewn with the same unpretentious craftsmanship. Stools, low and sturdy, were often made from single blocks of hardwood, their seats worn into shallow depressions by the weight of patrons who had rested there, contemplating life's fleeting moments. One could almost feel the cool smoothness of the wood under palm, a tactile comfort that invited reflection, while the benches along the walls offered a communal embrace, their backs carved with subtle reliefs of interlocking patterns, perhaps echoing the geometric designs found in archaeological digs from Kaifeng's ruins. Excavations in later centuries uncovered similar pieces, fragments of which revealed the song artisan's intricate joinery without nails, relying on dovetails and pegs that held firm through earthquakes and floods. These finds, preserved in the dust of time, paint a picture of a society that valued durability and beauty in equal measure, where even a simple bench spoke of philosophical depth. Amid this serene setting, the servers continued their ritual, their tunics swaying as they draped thin cloths over the tables, fabrics woven from local cotton and embroidered with faint floral borders. The cloths, softened by repeated washings, absorbed the warmth of the wood beneath. And as a server smoothed one out, the fabric emitted a gentle sigh, like a contented breath. Their tunics, practical yet elegant, featured slits for ease of movement, allowing them to bend and reach without hindrance. The cloth brushing against the table edges in a soft cadence. One might envision a server pausing to wipe a tea stain with a damp cloth, the stain resisting just enough to leave a ghostly imprint, a mark of stories shared and sorrows eased. In these moments, the tea house transformed into a living entity, its furniture and decor breathing with the rhythm of daily life. Yet, woven into this tapestry of tranquility lies a gentle mystery, one that lingers like mist over the river. The lost decor designs of Kaifeng's tea houses, hinted at in faded records and archaeological whispers, speak of patterns and motifs that vanished with the dynasty's fall. Scholars, poring over excavated relics from sites like the imperial city ruins, have uncovered shards of porcelain and wood carvings that suggest elaborate decorations, perhaps gilded accents on table legs, or intricate inlays of jade and mother of pearl that adorned the screens. These designs, described in ancient texts as harmonious blends of nature and calligraphy, were said to evoke the Tao's eternal flow. But they remain elusive, their full glory lost to time's inexorable tide. One fragment, discovered in a Kaifeng dig, shows a partial carving of intertwined vines, its edges worn smooth, hinting at a larger pattern that might have graced a bench or table. Why these designs faded into obscurity is a puzzle wrapped in subtlety. Perhaps they were deliberately concealed during turbulent times, or simply eroded by the elements, leaving only echoes for us to ponder. This mystery adds a layer of quiet intrigue, a subtle wit in the universe's way of hiding treasures just out of reach, inviting the imagination to wander through what might have been. As the servers finished their arrangements, the tea house settled into a peaceful repose, the furniture standing as silent guardians of history, the creaking of wood underfoot, the warm glow on stained surfaces, and the faint herbal scent in the air, all conspired to create an atmosphere of serene invitation. Benches invited one to sit and reflect, their surfaces cool and inviting, while the tables waited patiently, their edges softened by years of use. In one corner, a low cabinet held stacks of bowls, its doors carved with faint motifs that echoed the lost designs, a nod to the artisan's unseen legacy. The overall effect was one of understated luxury, where every sensory detail, the smooth grain under fingers, the muted clink of porcelain being set down. The whisper of fabric against wood wove a lullaby of comfort. To delve deeper into these elements, consider the archaeological evidence from Kaifeng's northern song sites. Digs in the 20th century revealed furniture fragments that align with historical accounts, such as those in the treatise on tea by Kai Xiang. Though we steer clear of sourcing tales, one such find, a preserved table leg with dovetail joints, exemplifies the era's engineering prowess. Its surface still bearing the faint impression of ropes used in transport, evoking the journey from workshop to teahouse. Sensory details abound in these relics. The tactile weight of a stool seat, the visual play of light on lacquered finishes, and the olfactory hint of oils applied for preservation. Expanding on this, imagine the subtle gleam of a table's edge, polished with beeswax that carried a honeyed aroma, or the way a server's tunic rustled like autumn leaves, each movement a brushstroke in the teahouse's daily canvas. In this way, the decor and furniture of Kaifeng's tea houses embodied a philosophy of quiet elegance, where every creak and stain told a story. As the evening deepened, the space grew even more inviting, the wood settling with a final sigh, ready for the next gathering. And so, as this scene fades like the last light of day, one might turn thoughts to the broader tapestry of the song world, where such simple beauties hinted at greater wonders yet to unfold. In the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the Grand Canal whispered its endless song through the city's veins, a modest tea house stood as a quiet eddy in the river of commerce. The air hung heavy with the earthy aroma of freshly brewed tea, leaves plucked from distant hills and coaxed into steaming pots by skilled hands. Servers moved with graceful purpose, their simple tunics of coarse linen swaying like willow branches in a gentle breeze. As they navigated the dim room filled with patrons, exchanging whispers and wares. Here, amid the soft clatter of porcelain cups and the distant hum of the marketplace beyond, trade unfolded not with the clamor of coins alone, but through the subtle art of barter, a dance as old as the dynasty itself. The tea house, nestled along a narrow alley lined with stone-paved paths, drew in travelers and locals alike, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of oil lamps that flickered like fireflies in the dusk. One might imagine a server, his tunic tied neatly at the waist, approaching a merchant with a tray balanced effortlessly on one hand. The merchant, perhaps a silk trader from the south, would eye the dark brew swirling in a ceramic cup, its surface rippling like a tranquil pond disturbed by a falling leaf. This tea from the misty peaks of Sichuan, the server might say with a hint of wry amusement, trades well for the finest bolts of your fabric. And so, the exchange began, not with ledgers or official stamps, but with nods and measured words, the kind that carried the weight of trust in an era where every transaction wove into the fabric of survival. In those days, the song economy thrived on such informal networks, as chronicled in the sparse but telling records of officials like Wang Anshi, who sought to reform the imperial tax system. Tea, that humble leaf, had become a currency in its own right, its value fluctuating with the seasons and the whims of distant wars. A server in his tunic, sleeves rolled to reveal sun-browned arms, might accept a handful of spices from a nomadic trader in return for a week's worth of tea leaves, the air filling with the spicy scent that mingled with the tea's vegetal notes. The clinking of a few copper coins, if any were involved, was a mere underscore to the symphony of barter's soft, deliberate sounds that echoed through the room like distant chimes, reminding all present of the empire's vast trade networks stretching from the Yellow River's banks to the Silk Roads beyond. Yet there was a rhythm to this exchange, a calming cadence that soothed the soul even as it fueled the city's pulse. Patrons sat on low stools, their conversations a murmur like the rustle of bamboo in a summer wind, while servers moved with unhurried grace. One might picture a young woman in a faded tunic, her hair tied back with a simple cord, bartering a pot of jasmine-infused tea for a string of beads from a peddler. The beads, smooth and cool to the touch, caught the lamplight as they changed hands, their colors evoking the vibrant markets of Hangzhou. She examined them with a subtle smile, her wit shining through in a quiet remark. These will brighten the dullest of days, much like your spices enliven our brews. Such moments were laced with the everyday poetry of trade, where goods spoke more than words, and the sensory tapestry of the teahouse enveloped all in a cocoon of warmth. Historical accounts, drawn from the Song era texts, like the history of song, reveal how tea houses served as microcosms of the broader economy, where bartering allowed for flexibility in a world of fluctuating coin values. Inflation had crept in during Emperor Renzong's reign, making metal currency unreliable. So tea emerged as a stable medium. A server might trade a bundle of compressed tea bricks, those dense, earthy cakes that released a fragrant steam when steeped, for a sack of grain or a bolt of cloth. The transaction recorded not in official logs, but in the memories of those involved. The air would carry the scent of the grain, a nutty undertone blending with the tea's bitterness, while the cloth's texture, rough yet resilient, added a tactile layer to the exchange. In this way, the tea house became a sanctuary of commerce, its walls absorbing the soft footfalls and murmured agreements that defined the era's ingenuity. Amid this serene bustle, a mystery lingered like mist over the canal. The unrecorded trade logs, while imperial scribes meticulously documented taxes and official trades in volumes such as the Song Huiyao. Many barters slipped into the shadows, evading the ink of history. One could ponder how a server, in his unassuming tunic, might slip a particularly lucrative deal past the eyes of authorities, perhaps exchanging rare teas for exotic goods from the western frontiers without a trace. These off-the-books transactions, hinted at in fragmented economic treatises, left historians to wonder at the gaps that spoke of a thriving underground economy where wit and discretion were the true currencies. The mystery lay not in grand conspiracies, but in the everyday omissions, the subtle ways people navigated the empire's rigid structures. As the evening deepened, the clinking of a hidden coin purse might echo faintly, a reminder that some stories dissolved into the night, leaving only the aroma of tea to hint at what had transpired. Servers, with their tunics worn soft from daily use, embodied this delicate balance, their movements a ballet of efficiency and charm. Imagine one negotiating with a fisherman, the salty tang of the river clinging to his clothes as he offered tea in exchange for fresh caught fish. The fish, scales glinting under the lamps, brought a briny scent that wove through the tea's floral notes, creating a sensory harmony that calmed the senses. Such barters were not mere transactions. They were acts of mutual reliance, documented in the lived experiences of Kaifeng's inhabitants, rather than in ledgers. The Song government's economic policies, as outlined in Wang Anshi's reforms, aimed to standardize trade. Yet, tea houses remained pockets of autonomy, where the value of goods was determined by the human touch rather than imperial decree. Sensory details abounded in these exchanges, each one a thread in the tapestry of the tea house. The warmth of a freshly poured cup against one's palms, the gentle steam rising to caress the face, the faint creak of wooden beams overhead, all conspired to create an atmosphere of peaceful abundance. A server might pause to inhale the aroma of oolong tea, its toasted notes evoking the distant tea gardens, before accepting a carved jade trinket in trade. The jade, cool and smooth, carried the weight of its journey from the southern mines, a silent testament to the empire's reach. And in these moments, a subtle wit emerged as the server quipped, "This jade holds the mountain's secrets, much like our tea guards the harvest's essence," drawing a knowing smile from the trader. Yet the mystery of the unrecorded logs persisted, a gentle enigma that added depth to the narrative of Song commerce. Scholars poring over surviving records, such as those in the Song Shi, often encountered silences where one might expect detail, suggesting that tea house barters were deliberately kept from official eyes. Perhaps a server, adept at the game's nuances, maintained a mental ledger, his tunic pockets holding tokens of unspoken agreements. This unseen web of trade, flourishing in the shadows, highlighted the resilience of ordinary people, their ingenuity, a quiet counterpoint to the empire's grand ambitions. The consequences of such secrecy were felt in the economy's ebbs and flows, where untracked wealth could sway markets without warning. Yet these events unfolded with a detached elegance, like leaves drifting on a stream. As the night wore on, the tea house's energy softened, the crowds thinning like fog at dawn. The last barters concluded with the pour of a final cup, its steam curling upward in lazy spirals, carrying whispers of deals yet to be told. In this calming ritual, one could almost hear the echoes of history's untold stories, a prelude to the broader tapestry of the song era. And so, as the lamps dimmed and the canal's song grew faint, the scene faded, inviting the mind to wander toward new horizons where other mysteries awaited in the dawn's light. Word count 1502. In the soft hush of an autumn evening in 11th century Kaifeng, the tea houses along the bustling Bayan River came alive with the whisper of festivals long cherished by the song courtiers and common folk alike. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of freshly brewed tea leaves, mingling with the distant aroma of roasted chestnuts and sweet osmanthus blooms. Patrons gathered under wooden eaves adorned with swaying lanterns, their silk robes flowing like ripples on a serene pond, embroidered with patterns of cranes and peonies that caught the golden flicker of candlelight. Here, in these havens of repose, the rhythms of daily life paused for moments of gentle revelry, where the simple act of sharing a cup became a dance of shared stories and subtle joys. The festivals of the tea houses were not grand spectacles of the imperial court, but intimate affairs that unfolded like verses from a forgotten scroll in the glow of hanging lanterns, their paper shades casting warm shadows across polished tables. Men and women in festive attire arrived as the sun dipped below the city walls. The robes were a tapestry of color-deep crimsons and jade greens, woven with threads of silver that shimmered under the soft light, evoking the elegance of song prosperity. A young scholar might adjust his wide-sleeved tunic, its edges trimmed with intricate knots, symbolizing enduring bonds, while a merchant's wife smoothed her flowing skirt, adorned with motifs of blooming chrysanthemums that whispered of seasonal change. They settled onto low stools, the wood creaking ever so slightly, as servers glided through the crowd with trays of porcelain cups, each one steaming with the delicate brew of Lun tea, its leaves plucked from misty hills far to the south. As the evening deepened, the sound of drums echoed gently through the tea house halls, a rhythmic pulse like the heartbeat of the city itself. Not the thunderous beats of battle drums, but soft, resonant taps that invited rather than commanded, drawing patrons into a shared cadence. One could hear the faint thrum from the corner, where a musician struck a small leather drum with padded mallets, the vibrations traveling through the air like a lullaby carried on the wind. The patrons responded with laughter that bubbled like the tea in their cups, their voices blending into a harmonious murmur. A group of friends, their faces illuminated by the lantern glow, raised their cups in silent toast, the steam rising in delicate spirals that danced before their eyes. The tea itself was a revelation, its flavor a subtle symphony, with notes of toasted nuts and fresh rain, sipped slowly to savor the warmth spreading through the body like a gentle embrace. In these gatherings, the festivals drew from the poetry of the era, echoes of she's verses weaving through the conversations like threads of silk. One patron, perhaps inspired by the poet's own words, might recite softly, "The moon is bright, the wind is fresh. I pour a cup and think of friends afar." The lines hung in the air, evoking images of riverside willows and distant mountains, as if the teahouse itself became a living poem. Historical accounts from song texts, like those in the Donjing Meng Hualu, describe such scenes with a poet's eye, noting how these events celebrated the harvest or the turn of seasons without the weight of formal rituals. Yet there was an undercurrent of mystery in these festivals, a whisper of unrecorded rites that added a layer of intrigue to the night's festivities. Whispers among the elders spoke of secret toasts and gestures passed down through generations, practices that left no trace in the official chronicles. These might have been simple exchanges, a particular way of pouring tea, or a hidden pattern in the arrangement of snacks on the table that held deeper meanings, lost to time like faint stars fading at dawn. The patrons, in their festive robes, moved with a graceful ease, their movements as fluid as the tea flowing from spouted pots. The fabric rustled softly, a sound like leaves brushing against one another in a quiet breeze, as they leaned in to share tales of the day's markets or the latest poetic compositions. One could almost taste the air, laced with the sweetness of honeyed dates and the bitterness of green tea, a balance that mirrored the song era's blend of refinement and simplicity. Lanterns swayed overhead, their warm light casting elongated shadows that played across the walls, creating illusions of figures dancing in the corners. The glow was not harsh, but soothing, like the final rays of sunset lingering on a riverbank, inviting reflection rather than excitement. As the drums continued their gentle rhythm, other instruments joined in a subtle erhu string humming like a distant conversation, its melancholic notes weaving through the air without overwhelming the senses. Patrons clapped softly in time, their hands meeting with a muted pat that echoed the heartbeat of the gathering. In one corner, a storyteller spun yarns of ancient heroes, his voice a calm river flowing over stones, drawing nods and smiles from listeners whose robes shifted like waves in response. The tea, served in cups thin as eggshells, warmed the fingers and soothed the spirit, its aroma a mix of floral hints and earthy depth, lingering long after the first sip. These moments were steeped in the essence of song culture, where even the simplest festival became a canvas for sensory delight. Yet, amid the celebration, the mystery of those unrecorded rites lingered like an unspoken secret. Perhaps it was in the way certain patrons exchanged knowing glances before raising their cups, or in the careful placement of a single flower petal atop a teapot, a gesture that held no place in the written histories. Shi himself, in his wanderings, might have alluded to such customs in his poems, writing of hidden streams beneath the moon. Though he never detailed them outright, these rites, if they existed, were not tied to the divine or communal oaths, but rather to the personal, the ephemeral joys that evaded the scribe's brushes. They added a subtle wit to the evenings, a gentle tease at the impermanence of life, where one might ponder if the true festival lay not in the visible revelry, but in these shadowy traditions. The night progressed with the slow grace of an unfolding scroll, each hour bringing new layers of sensation. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming jasmine from the gardens beyond, while the lantern's glow softened into a hazy amber. Patrons refilled their cups, the sound of liquid pouring like a soft rain on roof tiles, and conversations turned to lighter topics, the artistry of a well-crafted robe, or the perfect steep of tea leaves. One could feel the weight of history in the room, not as a burden, but as a comforting presence, like the steady hum of the city outside. In this way, the festivals of Kaifeng's tea houses captured the spirit of the Song Dynasty, a time when life's pleasures were savored in quiet abundance. As the gatherings wound down, with the drums fading to a whisper and the lanterns dimming like closing eyes, the patrons departed into the night, their robes trailing behind them like echoes of the evening's joy. Yet the mystery remained, a gentle enigma that invited contemplation long after the tea house doors closed. What unrecorded rites had been performed that night, shared in glances and silent toasts, would forever tease the imagination, a subtle reminder that some beauties of the world are meant to remain just beyond the reach of words. And as the stars twinkled above the Bayan River, one might wonder what the next dawn would bring. Perhaps a new festival or a fresh gathering, carrying forward the timeless rhythm of Kaifeng's tea house traditions. In the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the Grand Canal whispered its endless song through the city's veins, tea houses stood as sanctuaries of steam and shadow beneath the eaves of wooden structures painted in faded vermilion. Women moved with the grace of willow branches in a gentle breeze, their silk tunics whispering secrets as they tended to the rhythms of daily life. The air carried the soft perfume of oolong leaves steeping in porcelain pots, a fragrance that wrapped around visitors like a warm embrace, inviting weary souls to linger in the calm. These women, often daughters of merchants or widows of modest means, embodied the quiet backbone of Kaifeng's thriving tea trade. Dressed in tunics of fine silk, dyed in hues of jade and pearl, they managed the stocks with a precision born of necessity and tradition. The fabric rustled faintly with each step, a subtle symphony that spoke of their unseen labor. In the dim light filtering through paper windows, they sorted leaves by touch, their fingers tracing the crinkled edges of dried tea buds, separating the choicest from the ordinary. The steam rising from the brewing kettles curled around their faces like morning mist on the river, carrying hints of earth and flower. A sensory balm that softened the edges of the day's demands. Historical accounts from Song social records, such as those preserved in the writings of scholars like Sima Guang, reveal how these women navigated a world where tea was not merely a beverage, but a currency of culture and commerce. In Kaifeng, the capital pulsed with activity, yet within the tea houses, time seemed to slow. A woman might begin her day before dawn. Her tunic's sleeves rolled to reveal forearms, dusted with the fine powder of ground leaves. She would inspect the stocks stored in lacquered chests, ensuring that the teas imported from the misty hills of Fujian or the verdant fields of Sichuan remained dry and aromatic. The silk of her garment, cool against her skin, offered a quiet dignity, a shield against the scrutiny of passers-by who might pause at the doorway, drawn by the scent of jasmine-infused brews. As the sun climbed higher, these women poured tea with practiced ease, their movements a dance of balance and restraint. The steam rose in languid spirals, warming the air and carrying whispers of camphor and citrus, while the soft clink of cups against saucers echoed like distant chimes. One might envision a woman named Lai Mei, though her story is pieced from fragments of records, carefully measuring out portions of pu-er tea, its earthy depth a testament to the long journeys it had endured. Her tunic, embroidered with subtle patterns of blooming chrysanthemums, caught the light as she worked, the silk's sheen reflecting the glow of oil lamps that flickered in the afternoon haze. In these moments, the tea house became a realm of tranquility, where the outside world's clamor faded, replaced by the soothing ritual of preparation. Yet amid this serene tableau, a mystery lingers, as elusive as the vapor from a cooling cup. Song Dynasty records, meticulous in their documentation of trade routes and imperial decrees, often gloss over the finer details of women's contributions, leaving gaps that invite quiet speculation. What unrecorded tasks did these women undertake in the shadowed corners of the tea houses? Perhaps they bartered discreetly with suppliers under the cover of dusk, their silk tunics hiding pouches of coins and secret ledgers. Or maybe they preserved ancient recipes passed down through whispers for blending teas that could ease ailments or stir forgotten memories. The air in those rooms, heavy with the scent of warmed spices and fresh infusions, might have carried the weight of these hidden endeavors, known only to a select few. In the writings of Aoyang Ziu, a contemporary observer, we find hints of women's roles extending beyond the visible. He described tea houses as places where the fragrance of leaves meets the wisdom of hands, suggesting a depth to their work that transcended mere service. A woman in her silk tunic might have monitored the quality of water drawn from the canal, testing its clarity with a drop on her tongue, the cool liquid contrasting with the warmth of the brewing pots. The rustle of her garment as she moved between shelves of dried herbs and teas created a soft counterpoint to the steady hum of conversation outside, a sound that evoked the gentle rustling of leaves in a secluded grove. As evening descended, the tea houses took on a deeper calm, the silk tunics of the women glowing softly in the lamplight. They would replenish stocks for the next day, arranging bundles of tea leaves with the care of a poet selecting words. The steam from the final brews of the night rose like sighs, carrying notes of honey and smoke, a sensory farewell to the day's labors. In these hours, one could imagine the women pausing, their fingers lingering on the silk folds, reflecting on tasks that history had not fully captured. Did they share tales of innovative blends? Perhaps a tea infused with rare orchid petals to invigorate the spirit, or methods for preserving stocks through the humid summers. Such mysteries, veiled in the ordinary, added a layer of intrigue to their world, a subtle wit in the way routine concealed deeper knowledge. Historical examples from the era underscore this. In the song compendiums, like the treatise on tea by Kai Xiang, there are references to women overseeing the selection and storage of teas, ensuring that only the finest reached the tables of officials and travelers. A woman might have used her tunic's inner pockets to carry samples, the fabric's smooth texture protecting delicate leaves from moisture. The sensory experience was paramount. The faint warmth of steam on one's face, the earthy aroma that filled the nostrils, the satisfying weight of a well-stocked chest under her hands. These details, drawn from the records, paint a picture of resilience and grace, where every rustle and scent wove into the fabric of daily life. Through it all, the women's roles were a testament to the era's social fabric, where tradition and innovation intertwined. Their silk tunics, practical yet elegant, symbolized a balance between visibility and discretion. Much like the teas they handled, outwardly simple, yet rich with hidden complexities. As the night deepened, the tea houses grew quiet, the last wisps of steam fading into the air, leaving only the promise of another day. And so, as the lanterns dim in Kaifeng streets, thoughts gently turn toward the broader tapestry of song life, where each role, seen or unseen, contributes to the flow of history. In the heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the ancient streets of the Song dynasty wound like quiet rivers through the city, a modest tea house stood as a haven for weary souls. The evening air carried the faint scent of jasmine and oolong, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp cobblestones outside. Patrons, clad in simple tunics of silk and linen, gathered around low wooden tables, their movements deliberate and unhurried, as if time itself had softened in the golden glow of oil lamps. Here, amid the gentle flicker of flames, storytelling unfolded like a delicate thread woven into the fabric of the night, a tradition as enduring as the great canal that fed the city's lifeblood. The tea house was a realm of shadows and warmth, its thatched roof sheltering a space where the day's labors dissolved into tales spun from memory and verse, men and women, merchants and scholars alike, settled onto cushioned stools, their tunics dyed in muted shades of indigo and earth rustling softly as they adjusted for comfort. A server poured steaming tea from clay pots, the liquid whispering as it filled porcelain cups, its vapor rising like faint dreams into the air. The first storyteller, an elder with a voice like the murmur of a distant stream, cleared his throat and began, his words flowing with the ease of practiced rhythm. In the quiet of the hills, he recited, drawing from the verses of Sushi, where pines whisper to the moon, a wanderer's path reveals truths unseen. The patrons leaned in, their breath steady, as the story wove through landscapes of the mind, evoking the song poet's mastery of nature's subtle grace. Sensory details enveloped the room, creating a cocoon of tranquility. The crackling fire in the hearth sent sparks dancing like fireflies, their soft pops punctuating the storyteller's cadence. Warmth radiated outward, chasing away the autumn chill that seeped through the latticed windows, while the faint scent of roasting chestnuts from a nearby brazier added a nutty sweetness to the air. Soft voices rose and fell, each tale a gentle wave upon the listener's thoughts, carrying them to far-off places without the need for haste. One patron, a young scribe in a tunic embroidered with faint bamboo patterns, sipped his tea slowly, the bitter tang awakening his senses as he absorbed the narrative's flow. The storyteller continued, his tone laced with subtle wit, as he described a clever fox outwitting a boastful hunter, a nod to the witty observations in the poetry of Wang Anshi, where human follies were mirrored in the natural world. As the evening deepened, more voices joined the chorus, each patron taking their turn to recite. A woman in a flowing tunic of pale green spoke of ancient heroes, her words echoing the lyrical style of Lai Qingzhao's odes, where emotion and history intertwined like vines on an old willow. Beneath the willow's shade, she intoned, rivers flow with stories untold, carrying secrets of the heart. The air grew thick with the steam of fresh brews, the clink of cups a soft counterpoint to the tales. Sensory layers unfolded, the smooth texture of the porcelain against fingertips, the herbal aftertaste lingering on tongues, and the occasional rustle of fabric as listeners shifted, drawn deeper into the enchantment. Yet amid this serene exchange, a quiet mystery lingered, the enigma of lost oral tales, those ephemeral narratives that slipped through the fingers of time like sand in the yellow river. These stories, passed from one generation to the next, often vanished without trace, their essence dissolving into the vast sea of forgotten lore. In Kaifeng's tea houses, storytellers guarded fragments of such tales, aware that many had been lost to wars, floods, or the simple passage of years. One elderly patron, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of travel, shared a whisper of this mystery. In the scrolls of old, we find echoes, but not the full song, he said, alluding to how song poets like Ouyang Ziu lamented the impermanence of spoken word. His voice carried a subtle wit, a gentle tease at history's forgetfulness, as if the tales themselves were playful spirits evading capture. The listeners pondered this, their minds wandering to the sensory details of those vanished narratives, the imagined crunch of autumn leaves under a hero's feet, the cool breeze against ancient city walls, or the metallic tang of rain on sword hilts. The tradition thrived on such mysteries, for they added depth to the storytelling, inviting imagination to fill the gaps. As another tale unfolded, the storyteller described a merchant's journey along the Grand Canal, drawing from historical accounts preserved in song poetry. The waters glide like silk, he murmured, echoing the verses of Sushi, bearing travelers and their secrets alike. Patrons visualized the scene, the gentle lapping of water against hulls, the salty mist on their skin, and the rhythmic creak of oars cutting through the night. The teahouse's fire crackled anew, its warmth seeping into bones, while the soft hum of voices created a lullaby like harmony. Subtle wit emerged in the narratives, as when a character outsmarted fate with a clever ruse, mirroring the ironic twists in Wang Anshi's poems, where life's absurdities were met with quiet resignation. Throughout the night, the sensory tapestry grew richer. The faint aroma of incense sticks burned to ward off the evening's dampness, blended with the tea's earthy notes, creating an atmosphere that soothed the spirit. Listeners felt the weight of their tunics against their bodies, a comforting reminder of their place in this shared ritual. One story delved into a scholar's quest for knowledge, inspired by the reflective tones of Lai Qingzhao, where the pursuit of wisdom was likened to chasing fireflies in a misty field. The mystery of lost tales wove through it all, a subtle undercurrent, as if the very air held echoes of stories never recorded, their words fading like the last light of dusk. In these moments, the teahouse became a bridge to the past, where historical accuracy was upheld through the poet's verses. A patron might interject with a line from Aoyang Ziu, adding authenticity to a tale of court intrigue, ensuring the narrative stayed true to the era's ethos. Yet the lost tales remained a poignant enigma, their absence a gentle reminder of time's erosive power. As the fire dimmed and the tea grew cool, the storytelling persisted, each voice a thread in the larger weave of song culture. The night wore on, with sensory details painting vivid pictures, the soft glow of lanterns casting elongated shadows, the whisper of wind against the roof, and the occasional sigh of contentment from the listeners. Subtle wit surfaced in a tale of a misadventure, where a character's overconfidence led to humorous downfall. Much like the self-deprecating humor in Sushi's writings, through it all, the mystery lingered, inviting reflection on what had been irretrievably lost. Perhaps a story of a hidden valley, where echoes spoke ancient secrets, or a ballad of star-crossed lovers whose fate was swallowed by silence. As the final tale drew to a close, the patrons sat in quiet repose, The tea house's ambience a balm for the soul. The crackling fire settled into embers, its warmth a fading embrace, while the scent of spent tea leaves lingered like a parting gift. In this calming ritual, the essence of song storytelling endured, a testament to the power of words to transcend time. And as the night deepened, one might wonder what mysteries awaited in the stories yet to be told, leading gently toward the threads of tomorrow's tales. In the quiet heart of 11th century Kaifeng, where the song Dynasty's bustling streets gave way to the serene thresholds of tea houses, dawn unfolded like a gentle whisper. The air carried the faint, lingering scent of yesterday's brews, earthy oolong, and jasmine, notes that clung to the wooden beams like old friends reluctant to depart. Here, in these modest havens of respite, the ritual of cleaning began not with haste, but with the soft rhythm of tradition, a dance performed by workers clad in simple tunics of coarse linen, their movements as fluid as the rivers feeding the city's lifeblood. The workers, often young men and women from the nearby villages, donned their tunics at first light, the fabric whispering against their skin as they stepped into the dim interiors. These garments, dyed in muted shades of gray and blue, were practical affairs, tied loosely at the waist with a cord of hemp, allowing for the full sweep of arms as they tended to the floors. The wooden planks, worn smooth by countless footsteps and the weight of shared stories, lay before them like a canvas awaiting renewal. With brooms fashioned from bundled reeds and bamboo, they began their work, the soft swish swish echoing through the space like a lullaby to the awakening city. Each stroke of the broom was deliberate, a gentle caress that lifted the dust of the previous day without disturbing the peace. The workers moved in a slow procession, their tunics swaying with each step, the fibers brushing against the planks to release a faint, woody aroma mingled with the remnants of spilled tea. One might imagine the sound as a series of hushed sighs, each swish dislodging not just particles of earth and leaf, but the invisible traces of conversations held under the glow of oil lamps. The tea stains, those stubborn badges of conviviality, dotted the floors in amber patches, their glossy residue catching the early light, filtering through paper windows. To remove them, the workers dipped soft cloths into basins of warm water, scented with a hint of mint from the nearby hills. The cloths weave, absorbing the stains with a satisfying slurp, leaving behind only the faintest ghost of fragrance. In this era, as chronicled in the sparse but vivid accounts of song social records like those in the Kingming Shang Tu scrolls and the writings of Sima Guang, cleaning was more than mere maintenance. It was an art of preservation, a way to honor the tea house as a sacred space for reflection and commerce. The workers, often trained from adolescence, learned to wield their tools with a precision born of necessity and tradition. They used not just brooms, but also feathered dusters made from the plumes of local birds, their tips gliding over surfaces to whisk away the fine layer of ash from incense burners. Without a single harsh scrape, the sensory symphony was subtle. The broom's bristles rasped against the wood in a rhythm that mimicked the distant flow of the yellow river, while the air filled with the clean, crisp scent of dampened reeds, a counterpoint to the warm, honeyed undertones of dried tea leaves ground into the crevices. Yet, amid this daily renewal, there lingered a mystery that softened the edges of the routine, a whisper from the past that even the most diligent workers could not fully grasp. In the song records, faint references appear to ancient cleaning methods, techniques passed down through oral traditions that have since faded like mist at midday. Some scrolls speak of a secret infusion, a blend of rare herbs from the southern mountains, perhaps wild chrysanthemum, or the elusive artemisia that was mixed into the cleaning water to not only erase stains, but to ward off the musty dampness that plagued Kaifeng's humid summers. The workers of that time swore by it, claiming it left the air infused with a clarity that soothed the soul. Yet, no precise recipe survives. One elderly proprietor, as noted in a fragment from the song Huiyao, once described how his grandfather used this elixir to make the floors gleam as if polished by moonlight, the herbs releasing a subtle, invigorating vapor that seemed to purify more than just the physical space. As the workers continued, their tunics now dusted with the fine particles they had stirred, they paused occasionally to inspect their work, running calloused hands over the planks to feel for any lingering grit. The wood, hewn from the sturdy oaks of the northern forests, responded with a smooth warmth under their touch, a tactile reassurance that all was in order. In these moments, the mystery deepened, for whispers among the older generation hinted at lost tools, perhaps a special stone from the riverbeds, polished to a fine edge, and used to buff away the toughest residues without scratching the surface. Such methods, if they ever existed, were not recorded in the official annals, leaving behind only tantalizing gaps in the historical tapestry. Was it mere folklore? Or had time erased a superior way of maintaining these tea houses, one that could have preserved their essence longer against the ravages of weather and use? The cleaning extended beyond the floors to the low tables and stools, though the workers took care to focus solely on the practices at hand, avoiding the broader rhythms of daily life that filled the tea houses later in the day. They wiped down the edges where patrons' sleeves had brushed, removing the faint oils left behind with cloths scented by pressed flowers, the petals' essence mingling with the tea's aroma to create a bouquet that was both comforting and ephemeral. Each motion was accompanied by the soft patter of water droplets falling back into the basin, a sound like gentle rain on a thatched roof, evoking the serenity of a world untouched by the city's chaos. In the dim light, as the workers knelt to scrub the corners where shadows gathered, one could almost hear the echo of forgotten voices from the past. The song records, such as those in the Donjing Menghualu, offer glimpses of how these practices evolved, noting that in the reign of Emperor Renzong, Teahouse owners employed specific chants or rhythms to guide their cleaners, turning labor into a harmonious ritual. Yet the mystery persists. Why were these chants said to invoke a protective spirit that kept pests at bay? Never fully documented, perhaps they were deemed too mundane for the imperial scribes. Or maybe they were guarded secrets, lost when the tea houses changed hands during times of unrest. The workers, in their tunics, now damp with honest sweat, carried on unaware, their brooms swishing in patterns that might have once mirrored those ancient melodies. As the morning progressed, the tea house transformed, the air growing lighter, and the wood emanating a fresh, earthy glow. The sensory details wove together the cool slip of cloth against warm planks, the faint crunch of swept debris, the lingering sweetness of tea that refused to fully vanish, creating a tapestry of calm that enveloped the space. In this way, the cleaning practices of Song Dynasty Kaifeng became a quiet act of defiance against entropy, a gentle reminder that even in a world of impermanence, order could be restored through patient hands. Yet the enigma of those lost methods remained, a subtle undercurrent that added a layer of intrigue to the workers' efforts. If only the full knowledge had endured, perhaps the tea houses could have withstood the passage of time with even greater grace. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden hue through the windows, the workers stepped back, their tunics settling into place, ready for the day ahead. And so, with the floors gleaming and the air alive with possibility, the scene fades, leaving one to ponder what secrets the next segment might unveil. In the fading light of a 12th century afternoon, the tea houses of the Song Dynasty stood like weary sentinels along the winding streets of Kaifeng, their once vibrant eaves now sagging under the weight of time. The air carried a soft whisper of steam from neglected kettles, mingling with the faint, earthy scent of aging wood and forgotten leaves. Workers moved with deliberate slowness, their tunics frayed at the hems, the fabric thin as whispers against their skin, a testament to years of quiet service in spaces that had once buzzed with the hum of conversation and commerce. These tea houses, once the heart of social gatherings, where scholars debated poetry and merchants sealed deals over cups of finely brewed oolong, now echoed with an unsettling calm. Tables, their surfaces etched with the faint grooves of countless cups, creaked under the lightest touch, their edges crumbling like dry autumn leaves. The rooms held a hush, broken only by the occasional drip of water from a leaky roof, or the rustle of a broom against stone floors, worn smooth by generations of feet. One could almost feel the dust settling, a gentle veil that softened the edges of carved wooden screens, their intricate designs faded to mere shadows of their former glory. It was in these serene, half-forgotten corners that the decline whispered its story, a narrative woven from the threads of history, yet shrouded in mystery. The Song era, with its prosperity under emperors like Huizong, had seen tea houses flourish as cultural hubs, their walls absorbing the laughter and debates of an empire at its peak. But as the 12th century unfolded, a subtle unraveling began, one that historians like Sima Guang chronicled in sparse, poetic records, noting the shift in trade routes and the growing shadows of northern threats. Yet the true causes of this decline remained elusive, like a melody half heard in the wind, unrecorded in the official annals, and left to linger as a quiet enigma. Imagine, if you will, a worker named Lao, his tunic patched with uneven stitches, the cloth rubbing softly against his calloused hands as he wiped a table clean. The surface, once polished to a mirror-like sheen, now bore the scars of neglect, splinters protruding like fragile bones, their edges catching the dim light from a single lantern. He moved with a rhythm born of routine, the scent of old tea leaves mingling with the musty aroma of damp bamboo mats on the floor. Outside, the distant call of a street vendor faded into silence, leaving only the soothing patter of rain on tiled roofs, a sound that lulled the mind into reflection. The tea houses had not always been this way. In earlier decades, they were alive with the clink of porcelain and the murmur of voices, drawing in patrons from all walks of life. But now, the rooms sat half empty, their stools gathering a fine layer of dust that sparkled faintly in the twilight. The air was cool, carrying a hint of chrysanthemum from a pot that had steeped too long, its flavor muted and melancholic. Workers like Lao spoke little, their words a subtle wit wrapped in the fabric of daily life. The tea grows cold as memories do, he might say with a faint smile, his voice a gentle rumble that eased the sting of emptiness. Historical records from the song, preserved in texts like the Song Shi, hint at broader forces at play, economic strains from excessive taxation and the costs of defending against the Jurchen invasions to the north began to erode the foundations of such establishments. Yet this was no sudden collapse. It was a gradual fade, like the setting sun that bathed the tea house walls in a warm, golden hue before surrendering to night. The workers, in their worn tunics, adapted with quiet resilience, their movements a dance of survival, lifting a teapot with steady hands, the metal warm and familiar against their palms, or arranging cups with the precision of a ritual long past its prime. Sensory details painted the scene in strokes of subtle beauty. The faint creak of a door hinge, like a sigh released after a long-held breath, welcomed the rare patron into a space where the air tasted of aged wood and faint herbal notes. Tables, their legs slightly uneven from years of settling into the earth, wobbled ever so gently, a reminder of the impermanence that now defined these places. The quiet was not absolute. It held the soft rustle of silk robes brushing against benches, or the distant toll of a bell from a nearby temple. its echo a lullaby that softened the edges of hardship. Amid this tranquility, the mystery deepened. Why had the tea houses, once symbols of song sophistication, slipped into obscurity? Official chronicles, such as those in the Zhu Zizhai Tongjian, mentioned fiscal woes and shifting cultural preferences toward simpler, home-based rituals. But they offered no definitive answer. It was as if the heart of the decline had been deliberately veiled, a puzzle that invited contemplation rather than resolution. Perhaps it was the subtle encroachment of war's distant rumblings, felt not in explosions, but in the thinning crowds and the empty seats that gathered shadows in the corners. Lao, with his tunic's sleeves rolled up to reveal arms marked by the passage of time, would pause in his tasks, gazing at the flickering candlelight that danced across the walls. The flames' glow revealed the intricate patterns on the ceiling beams, carved in the style of the era's artisans. Now, dulled by layers of soot, he might chuckle softly to himself, a wit as dry as the leaves in his tea, saying, "Even the shadows grow weary of waiting." Such observations carried a calming detachment, acknowledging the grim undercurrents without dwelling on their weight. As the days blurred into one another, the tea houses became repositories of forgotten stories. A patron, if one arrived, might sip from a cup whose rim was chipped like a worn tooth, the tea's warmth spreading through their fingers in a comforting embrace. The room's aroma, a blend of jasmine and aged timber, wrapped around them like a gentle fog, muting the outside world's chaos. Workers tended to their duties with a lullaby-like grace, their tunics whispering against the air as they moved, each action a small act of defiance against the encroaching silence. Historical examples from the period, drawn from accounts in the Mengsi Bitten by Shen Kuo, spoke of similar declines in other aspects of daily life, where prosperity's glow dimmed under the strain of internal discord. Yet for the tea houses, it was uniquely poignant, a decline not marked by destruction, but by a slow, almost poetic withdrawal. The mystery persisted, a thread woven into the fabric of these spaces, inviting one to ponder the unseen forces that shaped an era's end. In the quiet hours, as the last light faded, the workers would dim the lanterns, their tunics settling around them like old friends. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming flowers from beyond the walls, a reminder that life continued, even in retreat. And as the tea houses slipped further into shadow, one couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond this gentle unraveling, a transition whispering of stories yet to unfold. Perhaps in the next breath of history, new lights would emerge. But for now, the calm prevailed, a soothing cadence in the grand tapestry of time. In the soft glow of a Kaifeng dawn, where mist clung to the ancient riverbanks like a whispered secret, a team of archaeologists moved with the quiet rhythm of a lullaby. Their brushes danced over the earth, uncovering fragments of a world long folded into memory. Here, in the heart of what was once the bustling capital of the Song Dynasty, lay the remnants of tea houses that had echoed with laughter, poetry, and the gentle clink of porcelain. These spaces, more than mere establishments, were the soul of an era where scholars and merchants alike gathered to savor the simple ritual of tea. Now, centuries later, the dig site hummed with a serene energy, as if the past were stirring from a peaceful slumber. The first artifact emerged like a dream half remembered. A teacup nestled in the cool, damp soil, its porcelain surface, dusted with the fine grit of time, caught the early light in a glinting embrace, revealing swirls of blue glaze that shimmered like distant stars. The archaeologists paused, their breaths steady and deliberate, as fingers traced the curve of the rim. It was not just clay and color. It was a vessel of stories, its edges worn smooth by hands that had held it in moments of quiet reflection. UNESCO reports from the early 2000s detail how such items were commonplace in Song tea houses, symbols of a refined culture that valued harmony and introspection. Museum records from the Kaifeng Museum echo this, preserving similar pieces that speak of an artistry born from the kilns of Jingdezhen, where craftsmen blended earth and fire to create enduring beauty. As the excavation continued, more cups surfaced, each one a quiet revelation. One bore faint etchings, the glaze catching the sun's rays in a way that made the patterns dance like fireflies in the evening haze. The air carried a faint, earthy scent, a mix of loamy soil and the ghost of aged tea leaves, evoking the warmth of those long ago gatherings. Imagine the tea house of the Song era. Patrons seated on low stools, the room bathed in the soft flicker of oil lamps, as steam rose from cups in lazy spirals. These were places of respite, documented in UNESCO intangible cultural heritage lists as precursors to modern tea houses, where conversation flowed as freely as the brew itself. The cups, with their delicate handles and intricate designs, whispered of a legacy that threaded through time, influencing contemporary tea ceremonies in places like Hangzhou's West Lake, where the ritual's grace echoes the song's emphasis on mindfulness. Yet, amid this serene unveiling, a mystery lingered like a half-forgotten melody. The etchings on one cup, barely visible beneath layers of dust, hinted at tales, untold stories of poets who vanished into the night, their verses etched in glaze as a final, enigmatic farewell. According to museum archives, such inscriptions often alluded to the hidden scrolls of the Song literati, narratives that blended history with folklore, preserved in artifacts rather than texts. This particular cup, with its glinting azure lines forming what might be characters from a lost epic, posed a riddle. What secrets did these tea houses guard? Were they mere backdrops for daily life, or repositories of wisdom that slipped through the cracks of history? The archaeologists, their movements as gentle as a cradle sway, pondered this with a subtle wit, how irony played in the fact that these fragile relics, overlooked for centuries, now outshone the grand palaces in their quiet eloquence. The soil yielded more treasures, each piece adding to the tapestry. A saucer, its surface smooth as polished stone under the touch, carried the faint residue of what might have been tea stains, a sensory echo of flavors long dissipated. One could almost taste the subtle bitterness of lion leaves, as described in historical records from the Henan Provincial Museum, where Song Dynasty tea culture is catalogued as a blend of art and necessity. The tea houses, as UNESCO notes, were not just for the elite, they welcomed all, fostering a communal spirit that persists in today's public tea gardens. Sensory details abounded. The cool weight of the porcelain in hand, the way sunlight played across its surface like water over pebbles, and the soft rustle of unearthed earth, reminiscent of leaves stirring in a gentle breeze. As the day progressed, the team uncovered a cluster of cups arranged as if left mid-conversation. Their glazes, in shades of jade and celadon, glinted with a luster that spoke of masterful firing techniques, details corroborated by UNESCO reports on Chinese ceramic heritage. Each piece was a link to a legacy that shaped modern aesthetics, influencing the design of contemporary teaware seen in Beijing's Forbidden City exhibitions. The mystery deepened with these findings. Inscriptions suggested tales of the wandering sage, a figure from Song folklore whose exploits were whispered in tea houses, but never fully recorded. This enigma, distinct from any broader historical declines, invited a detached curiosity how such stories, fragile as the porcelain itself, endured through the ages, waiting for patient hands to reveal them. In the afternoon light, filtered through a canopy of willow trees, the archaeologists handled each artifact with reverence, their tools whispering against the soil. The cup's surfaces, dusted and cleaned, revealed more sensory wonders. The tactile ridges where fingers had gripped them, the faint, musty aroma that mingled with the site's earthy bouquet, and the visual play of light that made the glazes seem alive, as if breathing with the rhythm of history. Museum records from the National Museum of China highlight how Song tea houses influenced social customs, leading to today's tea appreciation societies, where the act of pouring becomes a meditative art. Yet the forgotten tales added a layer of intrigue, like a subtle undercurrent in a calm stream. One cup's etching, possibly a poem fragment, evoked images of moonlit gatherings, where words were exchanged like sips of tea, lost now to time, but resurrected in these digs. The legacy unfolded further, with each discovery weaving into the narrative of modern China. Sensory details enriched the scene. The cool breeze carrying hints of jasmine, reminiscent of the flowers that might have adorned Song tea house tables, and the soft glow of the setting sun on the artifacts, making their glazes shimmer like distant memories. UNESCO documentation emphasizes how these tea houses fostered cultural exchange, a tradition seen in today's fusion tea events, where ancient rituals meet contemporary flair, the mystery of the forgotten tales, perhaps encoded in the cup's designs, offered a gentle puzzle one that hinted at undiscovered manuscripts or oral traditions preserved in artifact form, drawing a subtle, witty parallel to how modern life buries its own stories beneath daily routines. As evening approached, the archaeologists paused to reflect, the site's tranquility wrapping around them like a warm blanket. The cups, now carefully documented, stood as testaments to an enduring heritage. Their sensory allure, the smooth textures, the glinting surfaces, the faint echoes of aroma, inviting contemplation. This legacy, rooted in the Song Dynasty's teahouses, continues to shape China's cultural landscape. From museum displays to everyday rituals, and as the stars began to emerge, casting a soft light over the dig, one couldn't help but wonder what other mysteries awaited, gently leading toward the paths yet to be explored.